Once upon a time, a deity crafted a strange new realm solely to alleviate their own boredom, this being named the world the Abyss, and the creatures it fashioned were cast into it one after another, slaughtering everything and everyone in their path. It was inevitable. Humankind was forced to seek desperate means to survive. Their only option was to endure and fight amid a vast ocean of blood, corpses, and endless conflict between humans and beasts. Battle and survival became their way of life, for the gods delighted in such struggles. Nothing brought them greater pleasure than witnessing fierce combat. The suffering and fierce resistance of humanity was their entertainment. On a shattered battlefield, strewn with the corpses of dragons and humans alike, no victor had emerged from the savage clash. A figure knelt, coughing up blood before a massive golden-scaled dragon radiating power and menace. Though barely clinging to life, the man was crushed further under the enormous claw of the beast, his agony growing unbearable. Amid the torment, a purple-haired man surveyed the scene and erupted into wild laughter for reasons unknown. Despite the searing pain coursing through him, he hurled insults at the dragon just before his final breath. The beast, meanwhile, began to form a swirling orb of energy in its jaws. The dying man's thoughts drifted to others. If those people were involved, perhaps they stood a chance, especially one particular individual. Elsewhere, a woman holding a glowing golden magic circle announced that the last group of humans had just fallen. Turning to two companions, she declared that the only survivors now were the four standing before her. These four were humanity's last hope in a brutal world soaked with blood and conflict, where no one truly won. Ares was a woman with white hair clad in golden armor, wielding a spear and radiating an aura of gentle strength. Keldian, a blonde mage, carried a staff topped with a sculpted sun. Kangtai was a powerful warrior armored in ancient beast hides, brandishing a massive sword. All three turned their gaze to the fourth member, a young man sitting amid the ruins. His name was Kang Hansu, clad in dark armor, his black hair shadowing a worn expression. Ares praised them, saying they were the final bastion for humanity's salvation. Kang slowly opened his weary eyes, revealing numerous wounds across his body. Ares explained that they were gathered in the chamber where the Arcanial's temporal jewel resided, a legendary orb said to hold the power to reverse time. It was humanity's last hope after 50 years of devastation in the Abyss, which had left nothing but ruin. Tai addressed the group, stating only one could travel back to the past, seeking consensus on who should undertake the mission. With pride, the young man spoke up, asking if the decision had already been made and implying he would volunteer. He argued that the strongest among them should be the one to go, confident that everyone knew who that was, his posture brimming with self-assurance. Keldian mocked him, lamenting that he had hoped this time the man would say something wise, but was proven wrong again. Ares stepped in, urging calm and telling them to stop the bickering. She warned that if all Valkyries sent against the Golden Driven had been defeated, the monsters would soon arrive here too. Though it seemed unfair, there was no other choice. She then approached one of them. Among the four, only one was destined to return to the past. With compassion in her eyes, Ares named Kang, who maintained a resolute expression. Looking down at his hand, the young man questioned if he was truly capable of such a journey. He reflected on their long struggle, every day a fight, every day the same grim cycle. Dying didn't frighten him anymore. Still staring at his hand, Kang Hansu seemed lost in thought. Ares gently placed her hand over his, telling him not to sound so weak or disheartened. Kneeling beside him, she said that the hopes of all humanity rested in his hands. Her eyes sparkled with hope as she smiled warmly, begging him not to give up. Kang glanced back at his comrades, their unwavering support stirring something within him. Keldian agreed with Ares, pointing out that despite Kang having started his journey 20 years later than the others, he was still standing strong, proof of his immense potential and power. Ares told Kang that if his talents had emerged just 5 years earlier, the present could be vastly different. Ta admitted that their praise was deserved and that he recognized Kang's abilities. However, if Kang truly did not want to go, Ta offered to take the mission himself, believing that returning to the past would allow him to retrieve lost items and gain a chance to change fate. Upon hearing this, Ares cast a threatening glare at Ta, which immediately frightened the girl. Sensing her fear, Ta quickly backtracked, clarifying that the only one truly capable of such a feat was Kang. Treating this as a typical exchange between friends, even as the world teetered on the brink of destruction, the boy offered one final determined smile before rising to face his destiny. With unwavering confidence, Kang started toward the temporal jewel of his Kinial, all eyes from the group fixed on him. The trio who remained behind understood that Hansu was the sole hope for humanity's survival and felt immense pride in their comrade. They entrusted everything to him. Suddenly, a thunderous crash shattered the tense silence, instilling fear as everyone everyone realized the apocalypse was upon them. The ceiling above began to fracture violently, splitting open as a titanic beast forced its way inside. The majestic golden dragon king emerged, towering over them, causing stones to tumble and narrowly miss Hero's head. The monstrous creature opened its maw, preparing to unleash a devastating blaze aimed at annihilating the humans. Determined to protect his allies, Keldian warned everyone to stay alert and commanded the dragon to halt, simultaneously weaving an immense spell upon the beast. He quickly outlined their battle strategy as the confrontation erupted. Instructing Ares and Ta to hold the creature in place, Keldian prepared for a critical maneuver. In the thick of the fight, Ta demonstrated his strength by halting a massive boulder mid-air with his bare hands, shielding Ares from harm. Confident, he assured Keldian he was ready to showcase his abilities. Grasping her spear tightly, the girl charged the dragon, spinning her weapon with fierce determination. Behind the Dragon King, an army of dragons from the same lineage began to descend, intent on eradicating the remaining humans. But fortune favored the defenders when Ares slammed her spear into the ground, causing it to grow tremendously. She commanded Ta to strike, seizing the opening. Wielding his enormous sword, Ta engulfed himself in flames, declaring he didn't need the order to attack. Whirling his blade, he conjured a fiery vortex, poised to strike the dragon. With a powerful slash, Ta unleashed a torrent of fire that cleaved multiple dragons in half, heading straight for the Dragon King. The colossal beast narrowly evaded and retaliated with claw strikes aimed at Ta, who barely deflected the blows with his sword. Meanwhile, Keldian urged Hansu to focus intently, opening a book to begin casting a critical spell. The mage warned that the protagonist's primary weapon had been destroyed, and advised him to stop dwelling on the past. Ares concurred, acknowledging Keldian's counsel. Though saddened, she implored Kang to move forward and not push away those who came to him, even if they irritated him. Giving one last glance, she urged him to protect others and questioned if he would heed her words this time. Wearing a bittersweet smile but trying to maintain his composure, Hansu promised to do his best to honor her request. Turning back to the battle, Ares reminded him that even under these dire circumstances, he must not abandon himself. She confidently entrusted the remainder of the fight to Keldian, then looked skyward as if welcoming the dawn of a new day. Keldian, though heavy-hearted, maintained his resolve and apologized to Hansu, emphasizing the importance of his attention. Beginning to conjure a radiant golden spell within his book, Keldian echoed Ares' sentiment. Unnecessary killing was unwarranted, but no mercy should be shown to the cockroaches that threaten humanity's survival. The boy must save only those worthy of life, even if he wades through a sea of blood for humanity's sake. The mage added that Hansu should make sure to eliminate the berserk monarch, Clementine. As the spell neared completion, suffused with immense golden energy pouring through the book and the temporal jewel, Keldian asked once more if Hansu understood. The boy nodded firmly, signaling his readiness. The temporal jewel of Arcania began to radiate an intense light, its blade spinning rapidly. Kang stood silently, eyes fixed on the jewel, contemplating what was to come. Ares and Todd watched the sphere emit radiant beams, sharing a hopeful smile, their faith placed in their friend. At last, Keldian joined his glowing hands to summon a vast magic circle on the ceiling, illuminating the shadowed realm. Suddenly, the temporal jewel unleashed a powerful surge of electricity across the group, engulfing everything in a blinding white light. From the haze, distant cries could be heard, some lost souls calling out for loved ones, and a woman desperately searching for her son. Amidst this confusion, Kang gazed at his own hand, grasping the reality of what had transpired. They found themselves in a desolate post-apocalyptic city, bathed in an eerie green glow emanating from a distant source. Smiling, Kang covered his face with his hand and declared that the plan had succeeded, promising he would not fail in this life, not this time. The scattered survivors appeared utterly disoriented, wandering aimlessly without understanding their surroundings. As they searched for family members and longed to return home, their ignorance of the present danger was palpable. Tensions rose as a man grabbed another by the collar, accusing him of wrongdoing, though the other had no clue what was happening. Kang reflected that it was natural for these people to be confused. They had just been thrust into an unknown world without any explanation. He recounted that his birth year had been extraordinary. An initial population of 100 had rapidly grown, only for many to vanish, spiraling the situation out of control. On his 20th birthday, a mysterious phenomenon appeared in the sky, an interdimensional portal resembling an enormous eye connecting two worlds. Drawn into this unknown force, Kang vanished, his cell phone falling to the ground below. This other world devours other dimensions and is the midpoint of the abyss's impact. Those who arrived first in this world gained abilities first and were essentially more active. But still, the creatures of strange aspects turned that world into a horrible palace, and it was a world of violence and anarchy. Those who were devoured by the abyss were transported to the so-called other world, and when everyone from this reality arrives there, the door to the abyss opens, and the great war will begin between humans and demonic beasts that only want to see blood and chaos. While stretching, Hansu comments that he has about 5 years to become strong, and then starts walking around the place. The boy remembers that skills he learned and his strength all disappeared, meaning now he is normal. Anyway, now it's time to show up, and then the boy looks at the sky. All the people wonder what was happening while the sky starts to crack and a strong blue energy begins to come out of the opening. From the interdimensional crack, a small creature comes out, leaving everyone astonished. A being that looked like a bat with horns. The creature looked very cute and extremely friendly, and all the people pay attention to it. The monster reveals itself as an assistant fairy who was there to help with quick procedures, leaving the humans in the place astonished. A bit embarrassed, the fairy asks everyone there to please listen to what she was about to say. Hearing this, Kang calls that creature Dan Fake, saying that the quick procedures she talks about were not what they seemed, but rather involved telling everyone to fight and beat each other, causing chaos everywhere. The creature first welcomes everyone to the other worlds, saying that from now on, a surprising opportunity will be given to them. However, one of the people there was completely dissatisfied, saying he didn't care about any of that and just wanted to go home. Irritated, the demonic creature begins to reveal its true face and orders the human to listen to the explanation silently. Seeing this, the man immediately freezes, staying silent because he realized that the monster's tone changed quickly. The beast continues explaining that infinite freedom is given to everyone in that place. With a demonic face, she asks if the people there dreamed of a world where law, moral order, and ethics do not exist, and everyone is free from rules. And it wasn't just that. There are all the physical limitations weighing on anyone would, and depending on what you do, you could grow infinitely stronger. Similar to a powerful hero in a movie, everyone uses magic or their body's artifice to fight. With a cute expression, the creature says that the chance to do everything they ever imagined becomes reality in that world, and asks if everyone thought that was incredible. She also says she will show a simple demonstration of what she can do there, and quickly prepares to snap her fingers. When the beast snaps her fingers, she looks at the person who had interrupted her, and quickly a hole forms in the man's shoulder. Seeing a person literally evaporate in front of them, and with the boy's blood splattering, everyone is in total shock. Screams begin to spread throughout the place, and you can hear people saying the poor boy just vanished suddenly without anyone seeing. With a demonic expression, the fairy apologizes, then laughs, saying she didn't like people who talked too loudly. In desperation, the humans start to run, screaming and asking for help from anyone. However, there were no gods left to help them, and the fairy begins to snap her fingers, killing many of the people who were screaming trying to flee. Again with a demonic and frightening expression, paralyzing all who survived. The beast says she had already mentioned she hated noisy things. The monster asks if the surviving people will work hard, but everyone can only freeze, trying to stay quiet so as not to anger the beast. With a cute expression again, she says it was very good that everything was now calm, and so she would continue conjuring a stone in her hand. This stone the fairy calls a rune, explaining that anyone can obtain a rune by killing anything that is alive. There are 8 other runes that look like this one, and they appear randomly. This rune had no color, but if you worked hard and grew, you could get better and more powerful runes. While looking at the stone that resembled a crystal, she says this was a rune that increased physical strength. The monster asks who wanted to take it, and Kang, in the middle of the crowd still in shock from everything that happened, raises his hand. The boy volunteers to take it, thinking it had been a long time since he used the last rune. The fairy is surprised by the boy's quick request, and then says that enthusiastic attitude was very good, walking up to Hanzo. The monster asks the boy to give his hand, and so he does, and the beast places the rune in the boy's hand, saying the rune was very cool because it distorted any law. The fairy explains that scientifically, the boy's muscles had a weight limit of 117 kilos, but at that moment, by using that rune, it increased to 122, and it wasn't just that. However, Kang seems to have the same expression as before, and the fairy says that wasn't the expression she expected, and Kang thinks it's boring to hear the same thing again. Disappointed, the fairy flies away and explains that runes have different effects depending on the type, and they are full of abilities that cannot be explained by science. And again, scaring everyone, she says she wanted to show it one more time, asking if anyone wanted to try. But seeing that no one volunteers, the monster says she would stop there. The beast informs that no matter what happens, everyone should note that as it doesn't matter which rune someone gains or what ability increases, it will not be a bad thing. And to become stronger, she asks everyone to gather many runes if they wanted to survive, of course. All the humans hearing that realize what it was about and look at the ground, seeing several bodies of others who were killed by the fairy. Quickly, a huge confusion begins with all of them fighting because they wanted to get the runes that were on the ground. However, when they finally grab them, the fairy collects all the runes from the ground and says that judging by the guy who had taken the rune last time, they didn't need her explanation. Everyone is in anguish because they saw that as a hope for their salvation. Pointing to Kang, she tells him that if anyone touched their right ear, it could see which runes they possessed. So everyone does, seeing a holographic status window appear in front of them. The beast concludes by saying that humans normally have 10 status, and that's all they needed to know, and Kang activates his window. He realizes that his strength increased by 1, and if he gathered more runes after hunting, his mana and magic power numbers could also increase exponentially. The boy explains that you can acquire runes anywhere as long as you kill something alive, and it doesn't matter what you kill, whether human or beast. The fairy says that at the beginning, they will be a bit unequal compared to the place they came from, and we see some unknown people, but she would give something that will make them happy. And so the fairy asks everyone to forget the past, and suddenly all the people in place receive knives for combat, and the monster concludes by saying that everyone should enjoy the new life. The fairy, with one last thing to do, says that when she leaves, the tutorial will begin, so everyone there should do their best, and the people are confused. Everyone, when turning around, sees an army of deadly creatures waiting to enter combat with all the humans there. Monstrously aiming only for destruction and chaos, an army of goblins sets out to kill all the humans. After the fairy's departure, the people who were there still remain in shock, looking at the bodies of the other humans. One of the men holding a knife in his hands nervously questions if that was really the tutorial, but people realize something is happening, and when looking back, an entire black aura starts to emerge. And when they face it, it is possible to see an army of goblins ready to attack all the humans there. The two races stand before each other and begin to stare, ready to enter into a conflict that will result in a sea of blood. A woman in the group of humans asks everyone else to calm down so as not to irritate the monsters, and to move slowly backward. Our protagonist remains still while watching all the people trying to flee slowly backward. However, one of the men bumps into another person who is standing still for some reason. The man questions what the boy was doing motionless, and the man standing says something was wrong. Someone sees a barrier in front of them, and when trying to, is immediately unable to do so. Everyone starts to panic, hitting the hologram, trying to leave that place urgently. The man realizes that the walls were also beginning to close in for some reason, as if forcing them to fight. And when looking back, they see an army of goblins completely irritated and restless, wanting to fight. The creatures start warring fiercely, and one of those trying to flee stands to fight, cursing those creatures, saying he couldn't die there. Bowden looking to the side, and that man sees that one of the people there managed to pass through the wall. Seeing that scene, he becomes completely restless, questioning how that person managed to do that. But the boy cannot explain why he passed and says he just went through that side, and we see that the number 49 was written on the wall. Another boy who was also there sees the number and questions why it was there. Then the man who had previously been unable to pass manages to cross. They realize that the number on the wall decreased, and the people understand that it meant only 50 people could leave. Everyone there starts a civil war among themselves, trying to pass through the wall immediately to save themselves. Seeing that fight, Kang sighs, saying that all of it was pathetic because all 100 people there needed to unite and fight to have fewer casualties. He explains that when he first arrived there, approximately 40 people died to the goblins. Of all the people who couldn't pass through the wall, only 10 survived. But with a bloodthirsty look, he says that this time the story will be different. While drawing the knife he received from the fairy, the boy adds that first he needs to clear this area and move on to the next phase. Tired of waiting, immediately all the goblins start charging at the humans. One of them jumps and kills a person while another goes after a young boy who was begging for help. However, suddenly, the boy can only see the goblin being split in half by someone, and immediately our protagonist kills one of the goblins while another beast starts charging at the boy. The boy manages to dodge the blow, grab and immobilize the small creature's arm, and then takes the opportunity to strike his knife against the monster's neck. Kang remains in a fighting stance, ready to kill anyone in his way, and the creatures start charging at him. Seeing all that sea of blood the boy was making with the creatures, all the humans there just watched the scene, shocked by what they saw. After a while, in a battle where our protagonist shredded several beasts, he stands up. still staggering from the weakness of his current body. While wiping the blood of one of his victims from his face, Hanzo says that it was a bit uncomfortable since this was his body from decades ago. The young man crouches to collect the runes from the creatures' bodies, thinking he was quite lucky as he looks at his status. He says that his dexterity increased by 0.1 and explains that dexterity not only increases speed, but also distorts the user's time, increasing reaction speed by 0.1. This meant that the user could perform the same action much faster. And then in the background, one of the creatures suddenly stands up. The monster immediately advances toward our protagonist, throwing his weapon at the boy, and he quickly looks back. The blade passes, and Kang manages to dodge quickly and turns back, throwing his dagger right into the goblin's skull. Some creatures that had still survived get angry seeing their companions being killed and charged at the boy. 3 of these beasts try to stab our protagonist together to prevent him from reacting. While wielding a dagger from one of the creatures, the boy says it was as expected since the monsters get enraged as soon as they see blood. Quickly, without giving the beasts a chance to react, the boy slashes through and kills them all instantly. As Kang makes more victims, he takes the opportunity to collect the runes from their bodies, stabbing and forcefully extracting them. The boy is somewhat out of breath because his body was not keeping up with his mind, but it was still very satisfying. The other people who were fighting to escape turn their attention to Hanzo, realizing he was fighting alone. Inspired by that, they themselves, irritated with the situation, decide to help our protagonist, charging at the beasts immediately. The monsters also notice the humans' approach, so the 2 groups once again face each other, but now a battle will begin. While fighting and splitting a goblin in half, our protagonist thinks that usually there's no need to rush like this at the beginning, but there's no time to delay at that moment, so he defends with his dagger against an attack from one of the beasts, repelling it instantly. The boy says that in that place there were many transmigrants, and if you counted the whole world, there's an immeasurable amount, and the freshmen who come there for the next 3 months will be something, so it's possible to see one of the humans killing a goblin. Hanzo adds that when people arrive there, they are protected in the tutorial area, but after the 3-month period when you are protected, everyone will be thrown into a fight with a 2nd and 3rd year freshman in a cruel, cold, and bloody battle. Kang continues fighting and concludes his thought, stating that whatever your opinion, it was a unique opportunity. Once again, he slashes a goblin in half, picking up a runestone to strengthen himself. Looking around, Hanzo says that the chance to get stronger, even if just a little, is there, and you will take advantage of it. Squeezing one of the runes he had obtained, the boy says that Keldion made the right decision in sending him to that period. Revealing the battle scene, we see dozens of dead goblins and some human bodies lying on the ground. Several people are resting after the exhausting fight, and some of them say it was all unbelievable. They observe our protagonist and wonder how he fought so many goblins alone. In the middle of a sea of goblin and dead beast bodies, Hanzo stands still on his feet. With a face smeared with the blood of his victims, the boy curses those beasts staring at their bodies. The fairy then returns to the place, and a glow appears in her eyes as if she were proud looking at something. Seeing our protagonist in the middle of the goblin corpses, the beast says he did well and states that the number of remaining participants is decent. Some people, angry, and others crying because they lost close relatives, start cursing the fairy. The beast asks if people already knew how to survive there, and then since no one answered, she removes the barrier, assuming everyone knew. A dimensional rift opens, and she starts to pass through it as if it were a door, saying that they need to keep moving forward and wishing good luck to all the participants there. The humans start cursing the monster, telling it to leave and calling it a bastard while our protagonist just watches. Looking at his status and wiping the blood from his face, the boy notes that it wasn't bad compared to before. He adds that his status was already good enough for the beginning of the tutorial, and looking at his hand, the young man comments that he found something quite useful. He sees a dagger that was previously used by the goblins, and the system notifies him that he received that blade as a courtesy symbol for some reason. Khan questions how he should proceed from now on, because he needed to find a way to get stronger as quickly as possible. Remembering his friends Erez, Tae, and Keldion, he wonders what his friends would have done if they were in his place. But now that he thought about it, there was a guy who said something that caught his attention. In the past, we see a blonde, long-haired person drinking a beer while asking Khan if he had ever heard of hidden dungeons. Hansu, who was drinking next to this person, asks what these hidden dungeons he had never heard of were. The guy explains that these dungeons are hidden within the tutorial area and have the maximum difficulty. As they clink their glasses, the man adds that he couldn't clear it and no one had managed to do so. After hearing the guy's story, Kan repeats what he heard, saying the boy had cleared the dungeon halfway, and because of that, he was still able to get strong. The man confirms, saying that this would be the reason he was in that place, because it was a proof of his strength. And finally, he says that if he could go back in time, he would definitely try to clear that dungeon first. And if he had done so, he probably would have been able to defeat Kan. Because one thing is certain, the higher the difficulty and the more impossible it seems, the greater the reward when you succeed. Finishing, he asks if our protagonist wasn't curious about what was at the end of that dungeon. Remembering that, the boy gets a serious expression, saying his goal was decided. Illuminated by the sunlight, he notes that if he wanted to do this, there were things he would have to resolve first. He begins to explain the first stage of the tutorial, which is the initial phase where 100 people gather and act together to defeat a greater evil. You'd act within the allocated area for a week at a time and do this hunt for 3 months. And in the end, upon completing the tutorial, the safe area will be released, and you can have contact with other people from the currently. There are 2 hidden pieces in the first stage of the tutorial, and no one has ever reached the end. Kang says he would have to obtain them because it was the only way to get stronger. But first, he needed to get the nearest hidden piece. So after some walking, we see the boy standing in a place saying it must be there. Suddenly, a voice emerges, and looking to the side, Kang notices a group of men trying to force a woman to go with them, but the girl is reluctant. The boy thinks that conflicts are starting to happen everywhere, and even though the woman tries to break free, the man holds her wrist. With a scary aura and a psychopathic expression, the thug says that everyone needed to work together to survive, continuing with a malicious expression. The bully questions if the woman didn't want all of them to live, and the girl hesitates hearing that. Han-soo states that there was no time to pay attention to this kind of thing, and he needed to find the hidden piece since it would disappear in a week. But someone suddenly calls him, and then a person behind our protagonist asks if he was Kang, and our protagonist thinks he was in a hurry. Kang questions if the boy knew him, and the man with headphones is incredulous, not understanding the question. Another blonde boy appears, questioning Han-soo if he was crazy since they were all together before arriving there. Hearing that, Kang still has an expression of not understanding while asking how that boy knew his name, but something comes to his mind. Looking at them, the boy realizes that those are his college friends, and the blonde boy continues to find his friend's attitude strange. Han-soo thinks that they all came on a trip together, and since everyone in the group died, he had forgotten about their existence. The woman who was being intimidated quickly frees her wrist from the man's hand, ordering the bully to let go of her because they were going with Kang. Our protagonist looks at the girl, recognizing her as Mi. The girl walks up to the boy, and Kang thinks that based on her appearance, the young woman will definitely cause trouble. Mi starts talking to Han-soo, questioning where he had been, and the bully who was intimidating the girl asks if that boy was looking down on them. Looking at Kang, they call the boy a bastard, wishing for his immediate death. Swallowing hard, the criminal realizes that this was the man who took care of the group of goblins earlier. However, he thinks that if the whole group attacks Kang now while the boy is tired, there will be an opportunity, so some men prepare for the fight. The bully steps forward, drawing the attention of the group of friends walking with our protagonist. He tells me that she should listen to people before leaving like that, and questions who Kang is because the young man seemed quite injured and unable to defend himself. With a scary aura again, the man orders the girl to go to him while speaking politely, saying that if she doesn't go to the group, they will come to her. All of Mi's college friends get irritated, but Kang maintains a neutral expression, thinking that this type of person always exists, no matter the place. The boy sighs, starting to walk toward the bully, and Kang tells the man that he was too excited just because it was his first fight in that place, not even knowing who his opponent was, believing in the illusion that he could defeat that person. Han-soo quickly appears in front of the thug with a murderous expression, asking if he understood what the boy was trying to say. After a while, the man realizes what had happened, looking at the boy and cursing him mentally. Kang draws his blade and asks if the thug had anything to say, but he remains silent. Another person appears, a man dressed in a suit with thinning hair, and says they were not bad people, and the boy who was intimidating the girl calls him boss. The so-called boss asks if Kang wanted to go with them, because looking at the situation, there were many problems ahead, and it would be better if they faced them together, and the boy, looking into his eyes, recognizes him staring at the boy angrily. Our protagonist thinks that man had already perfectly adapted to that place, no longer having a reason to hide his true nature, and running like a wild hyena. In the end, that so-called boss would become an outlaw. Han-soo, wielding his dagger, questions in his thoughts if he should take care of him now, since this is a golden opportunity. The boy remembers what Ares said about there being no reason to kill unnecessarily, but not to show mercy to the cockroaches that would bring harm during the war. He remembers the girl telling Kang not to push people away so much, and to do his best to take care of them, smiling afterward. With a serious expression and head down, remembering his happy moments, the boy says that Ares was saving many lives. The boy thinks that it wasn't, as if he had time to take care of everyone in that group now, and besides, this type of person would self-destruct just by being left alone. Ignoring the proposal, the boy tells the boss and his group to leave, and then one of the subordinates gets angry at that attitude. The thug boss tells the man to let it go, but the boy gets irritated, saying he couldn't, and the boss adds, telling some though that brat wasn't important and they needed to focus on another goal. He concludes by saying that the most important goal was to establish order in that place, because it was a strange world with weird monsters, and there was still a damned fairy, but there were things there that he liked more than usual, explaining that in this world the strong rulers were gone, stating afterward that they should take advantage of this chance. Then the so-called boss tells some, though, that they were leaving, and the man promptly agrees, and so the whole group of criminals sets off on their journey. Kang's blonde friend questions how humans are scarier than goblins. Turning his attention back to our protagonist, the young man thinks that anyway, he already knew the boy was a strange and a bit weird guy. However, he questions if he was always like this, and Hanzo continues looking ahead, aiming at the goals he must achieve. The blonde boy thinks that Kang was a damned orphan, who always sat in a corner distracted, so he didn't think much about the boy. However, the boy goes to question Kang because he acted as if he didn't know them, but trying to come up with an excuse, Kang spends some time silent and then, with the worst answer he could give, says it. The blonde boy questions why his friend was talking like that because he was acting old, and then Me starts laughing at the situation. Looking at the girls, seeing her beautiful smile and all her radiant beauty, Kang says it's a shame because the girl could have a comfortable life, but their beauty is a double-edged sword. If used well, it can become a powerful weapon. The group of college friends sets off on a journey following Kang, beginning to walk through that destroyed world. One of Hanzo's friends, a girl, says that they had all been walking for a while without saying a single word and asks if they had a destination. Mei asks Kang where they were going now, and the boy replies that they will all understand when they get there. The girl who had mentioned they hadn't said anything before realizes what place it was. Hanzo then moves to the front of the group, stating that this was their first destination. The boy observes the place, explaining that this was the subway station where the hidden piece is located. Everyone realizes where they are, and looking at a moss-covered but still readable sign, they confirm that it was Gangnam Station. The group of friends observes the entire station they knew, now completely destroyed. Mei questions why they were there since it didn't make sense to her. Kang thinks he doesn't have the patience to explain every little thing, and if it weren't for what Eris said, he would be walking around alone. But he feels he has no choice, so he starts to say that he had a hunch, saying he thought that instead of recovering his memory, he gained his superpower. Yumi is impressed while the other 4 members of the group seem incredulous. A blonde girl goes to her boyfriend and asks if he was sure it was okay to follow Kang. Hanzo can hear and responds that they didn't mean to, explaining that he was the type of person who respects individual preferences, and it was up to them to decide what they wanted. The blonde boy continues to be irritated with our protagonists for some reason, saying that whatever it was, he hated seeing Kang act that way. The group remains silent, watching Hanzo descend the stairs, and then they make their final decision. They all start following our protagonist, exploring that abandoned place and worrying about the surroundings. The blonde boy asks our protagonist if he was sure they were going to a safe place, but Kang replies that he wasn't, and that they would meet some friends. Hearing that, Hanzo's colleague becomes somewhat cocky, saying who the hell would live in a place like that, and what kind of person our protagonist knew. Reaching near the end of the staircase for some reason, Kang asks everyone to wait, and the group stops walking. Kang notices something drawing his dagger immediately, and everyone asks what was happening. Hanzo asks his friend Tae-sung to dodge something, and the blonde boy, looking back, sees the protagonist striking with his dagger. The man is scared, thinking the attack is against him, putting his hands up to try to defend himself. Tae-sung asks what it was, and upon realizing it, he sees that near his private parts, Kang was slicing a yellow-skinned, green-blooded larva. Hanzo explains that this was a dungeon modeled after Gangnam Station, and these are the green worms that ride after feeling vibrations from the ground. While looking at the rune that came out of the monster, he informs them that these creatures hate sunlight, so they usually come out of the ground to attack. Picking up the rune, the boy adds that if you get bitten by the awkward mouth of this worm, your flesh could be easily torn off, so everyone in the group should be careful because if they get bitten, they will faint and die before being able to do anything. Everyone in the group is completely scared and incredulous at that, becoming extremely frightened. The boy comments that he will show a simple way to deal with them, then starts stabbing one of the small worms with his dagger. After a while, everyone in the group is easily eliminating those little monsters, becoming impressed. Kang is observing 4 people in the group, stating that they are useful, but looking back, he sees the boy wearing headphones completely clumsy and lost. Hanzo walks up to the boy, saying that if he wasn't confident, he should walk on the intact marble slabs and be careful of some hidden worms. Yumi is talking to her friend about the best way to kill the worms, and the blonde girl agrees, adding that it was similar to the game of whack-a-mole. The boy with headphones continues to hesitate because he can't kill any worms, telling himself that he could do it and that he had to do it. Then one of the beasts emerges from the ground, charging at the boy, ready to attack him, catching him off guard without a chance to react. But immediately, Kang pushes him back, stepping in front and slicing the monster into 3 pieces instantly. After being pushed, the boy just manages to sit on the ground, watching the entire scene in amazement. The boy quickly gets up, thanking him and Kang, and his thoughts die, saying that it was already obvious because that boy would not be useful for the final war. Hanzo continues walking, stating that if the boy with the headphones participates in the battle, he will end up being a burden. Tae-sung says that our protagonists seem to know what would happen ahead of time and asks how the boy knew, and Kang replies that he had already explained. With a proud look and smiling, he turns around, stating that this was his superpower. While everyone in the group remains incredulous, not believing it, Yumi continues to be impressed. To change the subject, Kang comments that they should actually focus on hunting, and then we see several dead larvae bodies on the ground. Kang asks why they weren't collecting the runes while he picks one up. Yumi replies that they thought it would be good if the boy collected the runes and protected them, similar to giving everything to someone who carries them in a game. She says it wasn't like they would become strong like a superhero just by picking up runes, so that was the decision they all made. Hugh concludes that it would be better to give everything to Kang, and the boy would protect them in return, but the boy just sighs. The boy responds that everyone should take what they hunt, and if people wanted to go with him, they should at least follow the most basic rules. Hensu starts thinking, explaining that those who wandered the abyss before them established the most basic rules for the sake of coexistence. You take what you hunt, but in the case of group hunts, things will be distributed based on contribution and priority. However, in life-threatening crises, relationships based on goodwill are prone to break down and lead to betrayal. The boy concludes his thought, saying that they will soon realize how truly cruel and malevolent this place is. Kang states that the things everyone should trust are their own abilities, and if you are useless, you are destined to be discarded. Concluding that this is the law of the world, the other 5 members of the group are shocked to hear this so bluntly. Yumi steps forward, saying that in that case, she will do whatever it takes, and then starts walking toward the streets. The other 4 agree among themselves, realizing that was the best option since Kang had spoken. They'd all start heading out in search of runes, while Hensu thinks it will only take a little time for them to get used to it, so much so that they won't need to be told. And the boy notices that the group began fighting like dogs for the possession of runes, so we see the people trying to grab some of them. After some time of hunting, collecting runes from the bodies of dozens of dead worms, Tae-sung finds a strange and large rune. The boy says he can feel something, while everyone watches in shock, looking at the purple rune. Analyzing it, the system informs that the name of that rune is the essence of the Akral troll tribe, with a lizard engraved on it. Tae-sung thinks that if he uses that, he will gain a superpower just like our protagonist. Looking at his friend Tae-sung feeling proud of the stone, Hensu thinks that he had told them to take the rune they found, so it would be strange to contradict himself now. The blonde boy mocks our protagonist, asking if he can keep that rune, and also questioning if Kang would go back on his words. Hensu, who had already decided, just nods, answering yes, and his friend is a bit incredulous because it was unexpectedly easy. Seeing the situation, Hensu thinks that the essence of the Akral troll tribe is a good rune for the beginning of the game. The boy explains that this skill gives the bearer defense and regeneration power, and both are essential for survival in this place, which is why it is very popular among players. As a debuff, it also increases hunger, but regarding food, people usually just steal from the weaker ones. And also the strength and proficiency of the skills acquired through runes are determined by their own level. The smart ones who who were born with the gift of having a lot of magic usually have around hundreds of runes. His friend Keldian, for example, acquired more than 1,000 skills, but Kang watches the boy using the rune. Feeling downcast, our protagonist states that it was different, just immersed in his thoughts. At the time when he hadn't gone back in time, we see the boy trying to absorb some runes, but failing in the process. The rune he tried to use starts to glow with a yellow light, as if rejecting the boy. The boy feels hurt, clenching his fists as if irritated and dissatisfied with something. Holding one of the runes in her hand, Eris says that as she imagined, our protagonist had a limit on the skills he could acquire. Putting her hand on her face, the girl informs that apparently Kang was limited to only 7 abilities, and that if she had known that before, he could have learned stronger skills. While he sees himself amid a bunch of runes that could no longer be used, the boy thinks that being restricted to just 7 was a total failure. But thanks to his weakness, he gained the buff of having an overwhelming peculiarity that was far superior to that weakness. His abilities never stopped evolving, like his skilled Dororo lizard essence, so even a simple technique evolved enough to rival others. With this unique characteristic, his friend Eris gave him the nickname 7 Stars, and surprisingly, this peculiarity was what allowed Kang to have the same power level as his teammates, even though he arrived there 20 years later. For a moment, the boy remembers the Eternial Stone, which was responsible for bringing him back to the past in the name of his companions. With a serious expression, remembering the old times, Hansu states that to honor his friend's efforts, in the end, he couldn't make any mistakes. The boy also remembers that Eris told him to be careful while selecting the 7 abilities to learn and not to get frustrated again like in his last life. And if everything goes according to plan, it will be a smooth path before he leaves the tutorial zone without taking too many risks in the process. Then we see Yumai looking at Tae-sung, about to use the rune while the boy continues to smile, imagining the power he would receive. Quickly, the rune begins to transform into a purple slime and merge with the boy's body. Thus, his system informs him that the physical resistance stat was created, and the Eternial Troll Tribe essence skill was acquired, and he had 1% proficiency. Looking at his system, Tae-sung realizes he got a physical resistance stat, and all of his other stats increased significantly, making him extremely satisfied. The blonde boy then turns around, looking at Kang and calling him an idiot, saying that even if he asked, he would never have given that up. With an extremely smug smile, he states with all his words that the boy should wait because he would catch up soon. Kang, already tired of waiting for his friends, quickly calls everyone, commenting that they had to go now and continue their journey. And with his arrogance, Tae-sung walks up to Kang, putting his hand on the young man's shoulder and saying they should walk together now because it would be dangerous. While doing that, he turns around to impress Yumai, saying it was better for the strong people to go in front to protect the weaker ones. Already noticing his attitude, Kang realizes that the boy was considering him a rival. Having lived and gone back in time, Hansu doesn't care, but states that this didn't mean he would let it slide, so he removes Tae-sung's hand from his shoulder. The group continues walking and descending more stairs, following Kang to the destination the boy was seeking, but which was still completely unknown. Yumai asks why they were going deeper since it was getting even darker, and the boy explains that they were going to take the subway. Mei is confused, hearing that, questioning if there were still trains operating in that destroyed station, and Hansu responds that she would see what would happen. However, our protagonist, while walking, starts to get lost in his thoughts, stating that the information from that guy was never wrong. We return again to Kang's memory when the blonde boy was talking about the dungeons in the tutorial, and a person arrives, interrupting the conversation. The young man who was drinking asks who was butting into the conversation and bad-mouthing him, and the irritated boy looks to the side. Another man with black hair who served in the human army states that he just heard the boy was showing off with his basically non-existent knowledge. Then, sitting in the middle between Kang and the boy's friend, the man states that he would tell them the quickest way to get strong in a short time. He says that to get strong quickly, you need to get your hands on something important in the tutorial zone, and it was down in the Gangnam subway. The man explains that the stations are located and structured differently, but it's the same place up to the 3rd floor, and at the end of the stairs there is an unknown portal. Crossing it, you will find a subway that surprisingly has not yet left, and if you can catch it, you basically conclude that the only problem is that it's difficult to get there. While walking, Kang keeps thinking about it, stating that there is a hidden piece he must find that day at all costs, or the subway will leave. Kang and the whole group observe an enormous portal in front of them, as if linking two different dimensions. Hanzo then states that he will see what this piece is. Mei, seeing that interdimensional portal, thinks that it really wasn't Gangnam Station, since in all the times she had been there, she had never heard of an entrance like that while staring at the portal emitting several blue rays and a strong glow. Worried about the situation, Yu asks if our protagonist is really going to enter and wonders how the boy knew what was inside. He explains that he was just going by his instincts, and as he had said before, anyone who wants to turn back is free to leave at any time. With his new abilities and still with his ego inflated, Tae-sung promptly states that he would go at all costs. Mei then quickly responds that she will also enter the portal, and Kang, looking at her, thinks that the girl seemed to be getting impatient. Since Mei is intelligent, she probably understood well the situation that someone like her is at greater risk, remembering the group of thugs who intimidated her. Looking at the girl full of hope, Hanzo thinks that she will have to get stronger somehow, even if it means getting cut on the face. However, the blonde girl and her boyfriend decide to stay there, as they will continue hunting the worms that remain in the subway, and Sang-jin says he will go too. Even scared, trying to keep a firm expression, the boy states that he will also enter the portal. Tae-sung starts mocking the boy, questioning why he wanted to go there since he was scared to death to kill some disgusting insects. Irritated, Choi retorts, shouting that it was none of the bully's business and that he shouldn't interfere. He also says that what he does doesn't matter to the boy, but hearing this, Tae-sung gets somewhat irritated. He points a finger at the boy, asking what he just said, as the boy was talking a lot for someone who was being carried. However, with a firm expression and confident posture, Kang just tells the two to stop immediately with those childish fights. Walking towards the wormhole, Hansu reinforces that there is no time, so they should do whatever they want, and thus the three follow the boy. The boy with the headphones, after hearing that, just goes after Mihi without saying anything and ignoring Tae-sung. However, the blonde boy is not at all pleased, questioning how those bastards dare insult him in front of you. Then Kang crosses the portal and starts thinking that there are more than 1,000 types of monsters in the tutorial zone, and the terrain also varies. But even so, there are places that do not change no matter what happens. So the boy begins to analyze the entire place he was in. He thinks that, as he imagined, it is there, and thus the boy with the headphones becomes completely confused. Everyone who crossed the portal realizes that there was a convenience store inside the train station. Inside, it is possible to see Sang-jin with his headphones around his neck, while he rummages through the place looking for something that interests him. Kang is passing through the entire place and says that the same boy who mentioned this place also said there was a convenience store on the second floor of the subway. Tae-sung, who was analyzing a knife sold there, questions if they should take all the types of weapons they have there. Our protagonist still continues exploring the place for something he doesn't tell us about. Hansu also thinks that the boy said that place is more like a supermarket than a convenience store, but it really has everything necessary. Kang goes to a shelf, picking up a pot and placing it over a fire, and Mihi asks why he is doing that. With a bag of unknown things in his hand, he explains that seeing that, Mihi recognizes what it is and watches the boy pouring a green slime into the pot, explaining that it is worm blood. She remembers that earlier when she saw it. She wondered what Kang was doing, watching our protagonist extract the worm's blood and put it in a bag. The boy explains that goblin skin becomes highly poisonous in contact with green blood, and thus the boy begins to tear apart a piece of goblin fabric. Kang informs that goblins evolved to survive against the green worms, and that their poison is extremely potent, and thus he continues his exotic dish. As Tae-sung starts to smell the concoction, he comments that it smells really good and asks if he could have just a bite, but Kang surprises him by saying it's poison. Hearing that, the blonde boy says that if it's poison, Hansu should tell people first, but our protagonist retorts by saying that it was his fault. Yumi is somewhat impressed, commenting that they would never have thought of this and asks how Kang thought of it. Once again, the boy gives the same excuse, that it was his superpower and that his brain was overflowing with knowledge. Tae-sung gets irritated as he avoids the subject. He says that, in fact, he thought his head would explode from remembering all this, and starts recalling the moment when Keldian was giving him lessons. The mage says that even if they return to the past without knowledge, everything is useless, and that the amount of information is what matters most. At that moment, Tae and Kang were attending a lesson, and Keldian continues explaining that they should not share this information with just anyone. Tapping on the board, Yumi also informs them to keep this in mind, waking Tae, who was taking a nap. Keldian states that future knowledge only accelerates the abyss's decline, and that should reveal this knowledge only as planned and when truly necessary. At this moment, Kang is still cooking the poison and thinking that without knowing the exact ratio and boiling time, all of this would be useless. He pours the slimy purple liquid into a pot and then quickly uses it to coat his sword. Seeing that Kang is using it to poison his sword and buff it, asks if she could use it too. Hansu promptly responds yes, making all three of them happy with that. However, the boy extends his hand, commenting that he would charge half a strength or stamina rune for applying it to their weapons. Tae-sung, seeing that reaction, gets irritated, saying the boy was being too stingy and could just help his friends. Kang turns back to what he was doing, commenting that he could give it to them for free, but in the long run it probably isn't a great idea, while he continues looking forward with a serious expression. He thinks that one-sided relationships tend to crumble easily, so he couldn't follow that path. Mei Yi, quickly catching on, says she will give him the rune later, but in return, Kang has to let her apply the poison first. Hearing that, Hansu agrees, taking the pot he had used and handing it to Mei Yi, telling her to be careful. Tae-sung was planning to snatch it from our protagonist's hand, but gives up and says he will use it first and then give runes, and Sang-jin says the same thing. Hansu thinks he should start the other preparations while Tae-sung and the other two group members continue applying the poison to their weapons. With a backpack on his back and some bags in his hands, Kang comments that this should be enough preparation. The group, still finalizing their preparations, finally states they are ready, and Kang stares at them, with Sang-jin asking why he is looking at them like that. Seeing the three with huge backpacks on their backs, Kang questions if they are trying to become bait for other people. Kang explains that unless they want to live their lives fighting, they should bury everything else they wouldn't use at the moment, just like he was doing. Seeing our protagonist explaining that, Mei Yi says that at first she thought Hansu was just very quiet, but he was a great fighter, with her eyes sparkling. Watching the boy teaching Sang-jin to store things, the girl asks if one day she could have a superpower like that too. Quickly she goes and buries her things, thinking that hundreds of millions of people were disappearing until yesterday, but none of those people returned. That's why she was content that she got to survive there for the rest of her life, feeling somewhat apprehensive and desolate. She thinks she doesn't want to die at any cost, and that to survive she has to do her part, and that's why she was trying so hard. Yu smiles, walking towards our protagonist, thinking that if she continues with Hansu, it will be easier. Then Kang and Mei Yi start walking together while the girl is happy being next to the boy. Tae-sung, irritated by that scene, states that our protagonist was acting as if he were a big deal, but in the end, he wasn't all that. And Sang-jin, who is still preparing to carry his things, is quickly hit with a bag on his chest, and Tae-sung tells him to take care of that too. The blonde boy goes to our protagonist once again, asking about this power he mentioned, and with a serious expression, wonders if he could also get it. Reluctantly, Kang looks back and unexpectedly responds that maybe he could. All three members of the group are shocked, questioning if that was serious, and upon hearing yes, they become extremely happy and excited. The boy remembers Keldian saying that among the people who came to this world, many acquired special powers they didn't have in reality. He recalls the same guy talking a lot of nonsense that even he couldn't fully understand. But in summary, if someone is useless, our protagonist should get rid of them. Kang remembers the mage arguing with him, and Tae-sung, seeing the boy's reaction, asks what's wrong with him. Once again, the bully goes to bother Kang, saying he was very rude and asking if the boy was upset because he was angry with him at first. However, Kang says he didn't care about that because he wasn't very used to talking, and was speaking that way because of it. He thinks that in the last 5 years before returning, he spent fighting the species that kept emerging from the abyss, and hope slowly turned into despair, and the despair numbed everything, and Kang remembers the moment when he was in a battle with various injuries on his face, completely worn out. Tae-sung asks if our protagonist can hit his head fighting or something, because he was acting very solitary. Irritated, he thinks that if it weren't for that damn power, he wouldn't have to be embarrassed under Kang's command and could rebel. But with a malicious face, he thinks he just has to wait until he becomes strong, and then he and me could start going out together, and he would be Kang's boss. Tae-sung was about to say something again, but Kang immediately interrupts him, telling him to stop. Hansu crouches to the ground, seeing something resembling strange mucus there. Analyzing the slime, Kang states that judging by its type, it doesn't belong to a sword snail while examining it in his hands. He says it doesn't have that distinctive sour odor and doesn't see any half-dried guts, so it's also not from a zombie, leaving only one possibility. Kang begins to imagine that it is from a land siren, and in his mind comes the image of a humanoid with a grotesque tail, feminine hair, and a demonic face. The boy still feels a bit uneasy, analyzing more slime traces while continuing to walk with his friends. In a place with even more slime, he says that without a doubt, those are the traces of a land siren that must be nearby. They are not fast, but possess a paralyzing venom that makes it easy for them to tear off limbs, and Kang imagines the terrifying sight these monsters cause. However, the boy smiles slightly, thinking he has a foolproof plan to defeat the monsters. Tae-sung gets irritated seeing this and asks his friend to stop acting like a know-it-all, but Kang ignores the boy's tantrums and asks everyone to follow him because they will be surprised when they see something. The three in the group are confused by the boy's words, but after that, we see some alcohol bottles with a handkerchief stuffed into the neck of the bottle. Kang explains that they didn't have gasoline, which would be more effective, but that should suffice as he continues making one last Molotov cocktail. After finishing it, Mi comments that it's a homemade bomb and asks if the things they used to make it came from the convenience store they were in. Seeing that, Tae-sung says that it must also have come from Kang's power, and that all of this is very practical. He says that the boy must prefer this place to the original world, because he can do anything there while Kang continues storing the bottles in his backpack. The boy keeps talking, saying that if he had the power to do this, it would be amazing. But Tae-sung questions why Kang is looking at him that way, as if he had a little angel in the form of Ares and a demon in the form of Keldion on his shoulders. Kang's mind battles whether to kill the boy or not. Hence, he gives up the idea, sighing, and just starts drawing the plan with a stick in the dirt and says for everyone to listen carefully. He explains that when one person throws the incendiary bomb, the other three with melee equipment will advance and attack the creatures. Those who are on the front line will have priority to receive the Tae-sung thinks that the boy is very bad at drawing. The blonde boy promptly offers to take the lead, stating that someone competent should protect the front line. Kang ignores him and asks who will throw the bomb. However, Yu and Sang-jin raise their hands at the same time. Our protagonist tells the two to reach an agreement on who will throw the bombs, so they stare at each other. Mi tries to use her cuteness and appearance to win over Sang-jin, who says that arguing with her feels a bit strange. She continues trying to convince the boy, acting charming, but seeing this, Kang just decides that the two could take turns. After a while, we see Sang-jin immersed in his thoughts, holding the Molotov in his hands and wondering where they were going. The boy thinks that he can't say he wants to quit at this point because he came along not wanting to be left behind, but he questions if the rest of the group is okay with this. He watches Mi from behind for some reason, remaining silent and apprehensive about something. Observing the girl, we see that she is trembling with fear, reluctant about everything that is happening but unable to say. Even hesitating, Sang-jin stays silent with something stuck in his throat, but interrupting the boy's thoughts and surprising Yu, Kang tells everyone to stay alert because the sirens are coming. In the distance as they walk, a strong, frightening aura begins to emanate, and several terrifying grunts can be heard. Kang prepares to fight and orders his friend to throw a bottle immediately in the direction of the noises, and the girl starts rummaging through her backpack. Mi, though reluctant, thinks that she won't falter and with a lighter in her hand, starts to light the tip of the bottle's cloth. With the cloth now on fire, the girl asserts that she can do this and immediately throws the bottle in the direction of the creature's noises. The glass shatters on the ground near the monster, immediately causing the alcohol to spread all over the creature's body, and the burning cloth ignites the liquid, setting the siren on fire. Mi is somewhat pleased to have caught one of the monsters, and Kang charges into battle, saying that the rest will attack now. Quickly after seeing the body of one siren fall to the ground, Kang attacks two more standing amidst the flames, swiftly killing them and collecting the runes. Tae-sung, seeing the boy taking his spot, says that bastard is grabbing all the runes for himself again and that he can't keep losing to him. The siren appears near the blonde boy, and the monster promptly moves to attack Tae-sung, who immediately gets scared and tries to jump back and dodge the strike. As an automatic defense, the boy slashes with his dagger at the creature, hitting it and telling the monster he had lost because it was a worm. After opening his eyes again, Tae-sung realizes he barely hit it, but immediately sees the siren fall dead to the ground with venom flowing through his body. Looking at his serrated knife completely stained with venom, he thinks the thing worked very well, smiling. Kang, seeing this and the some runes in his hands, states that the poison he gave was very useful, and asks if it wasn't worth a few runes for Tae-sung. Looking at his reflection in the knife, the boy says that with this he could catch up to that bastard Kang in no time. And then a bloody battle spreads all over the place with strikes and several incendiary bottles flying through the air. Kang starts thinking that, as he expected, in a fight against paralyzing inflammable venom, we see the siren catching fire. He then adds that bringing the improvised bombs was an excellent choice as he charges at one of the creatures, slicing it immediately. The boy also thinks that the blade of his dagger was already getting dull, but that didn't matter since that was what he prepared the poison for. Tae-sung keeps smiling, attacking the creatures and enjoying all that bloody battle with a feeling. Blinded by his greed, the boy looks to the side and sees 2 runes fallen on the ground, saying that all those runes are his in charge to grab them. However, the boy doesn't notice that one of the sirens is still alive near him, and the beast quickly spits an extremely disgusting slime at the boy. The saliva quickly hits Tae-sung's knee, causing him to fall backward, saying that everyone was watching him and it was very humiliating. But before he can think about that with its frightening aura, the monster starts walking toward its victim, ready to devour him. The boy sees that in front of him, there were not just one but several demonic beasts wanting his blood, and he panics, trying to move backward. He gets irritated and curses at the monsters, telling them to get away from him immediately. In desperation, seeing several monsters charging at him, Tae-sung asks Yumihi for help while putting his knife forward, trying to protect himself. However, the girl panics a bit and looking into her backpack, she realizes that the incendiary bombs are gone, leaving only one alternative. She asks Sang-jin to switch with her, and the boy immediately agrees, asking her to wait a moment. His lighter was failing, and the boy continues trying to light the tip of the bottle's cloth, wishing it would ignite immediately. When the lighter finally lights up, illuminating a dark area right in front of him, one of the monsters is ready to attack Choi. Seeing this, the boy panics, throwing everything up and ruining his plan to defend Tae-sung. The blonde boy, seeing the last Molotov bottle wasted on the ground, gets irritated. He furiously calls Sang-jin an idiot and says he was supposed to throw the GAN bomb, not mess everything up. Choi, when he is about to be attacked by the siren, sees his slash passing in front of him, slicing the monster in half. Terrified by everything that happened and the mistake he made, the boy falls back again, just watching the beast's body fall in 2. After eliminating all the remaining sirens and with his blade practically dull, Kang tells everyone to calm down and stick to the plan. Standing in front of Sang-jin like a hero, he says that if they do that, there will be no problem. Han-soo turns, stating that everyone should take a break and collect their runes, and Sang-jin, still shocked by everything, remains silent, looking at the boy. Tae-sung, seeing this, feels relieved and sighs, stating that for a moment he thought he was going to die. Looking at his leg, where he had been injured but now is completely healed, the boy says it must have been thanks to his new ability. Han-soo explains to Tae-sung that if he increases his stamina and rests, he will recover faster and orders everyone to collect their runes. Kang had already separated the amount everyone was going to receive, and Tae-sung, seeing this, gets irritated, stating that Calculate Bastard was too strict in dividing. But looking to the side, the blonde boy sees the runes that Sang-jin is collecting and thinks of something. He imagines that if he takes those runes from the boy, it would be better, and then starts walking toward his friend with a frightening aura. Tae-sung calls the boy by his name, saying that it is a tradition of the Choi family to have no conscience or thoughts, and Sang-jin, hearing that, gets irritated. But before the boy can respond, Tae-sung quickly grabs him by the neck, preventing him from breathing. With a frightening expression, he lifts Choi while starting to get closer to the young man's face. Smiling, the bully tightens his grip on Sang-jin's neck while calling on his name. Trying to react, the boy places his hand on the blonde's arm, but he has no strength. With a manic look, Tae-sung tells Sang-jin that he can't even throw a bomb bottle, saying he almost died because of it. Panicking, the boy starts talking and tries to explain himself. In the background, Yumi catches the blonde's attention, questioning what he's doing and ordering him to let the boy go quickly. Dropping him to the ground, he calls him a bastard and lucky. Walking towards Sang-jin, the blonde tells him to pay attention and stop being so clueless. Pulling his hair and making a scary face, he says that in the past, Sang-jin knew his place, and now he just needs to follow others forever without messing up. After scolding him, he goes to grab the boy's rune, but the protagonist quickly throws a dagger on the ground. Startled, Tae-sung asks what's going on. Without mincing words, Han-soo says those runes don't belong to him. Trying to argue, the bully explains that giving those runes to Sang-jin is the same as throwing them in the trash because he doesn't do anything. Starting to get irritated, he says they would be better off without the boy, and asks if he's wrong to think that way. Responding, Han-soo explains that the distribution should be fair, and that he shouldn't mess with anyone's livelihood in the first place. Letting it go, the blonde says it's nonsense and warns him not to regret it later. Going to talk to the boy on the ground, he tells him it's better to take care of his own part. Listening to the advice, the boy retrieves his rune. A bit nervous, the girl calls out to the protagonist and asks if he isn't upset because of the group. Worried, she says that with the way things are, she imagined witnessing arguments like that must be bad for him. However, Kang says that for him, everything is fine, and he won't complain about something she's not good at. After hearing this reassuring answer, Yumi asks if that means he's staying with the group until the end, explaining that when she looks at him, it feels like he could leave at any moment. But the leader says it's up to them to follow him because they are doing very well, so they don't need to worry about that. Continuing on the path, Kang goes to the mermaids and sees that they dropped stamina and strength runes. Grabbing one of the runes, he thinks that both strength and stamina are important at the moment and that they are also necessary. His strength is at 25, stamina at 24, dexterity at 14, and senses at 15. Suddenly, someone appears in front of him. Expressing great joy, he notes that his combined strength and stamina stats exceed 50. The system notifies that this is the achievement accomplished by anyone, and the horned demon congratulates him. Surprised, the boy smiles and thinks he's caught the guide's attention. Then the little demon asks if he's the traveler who raised his hand last time and says that it seems his judgment was correct. Getting closer, he says they always love those who make an effort. Landing on his head, he explains that he'd like to give a small gift to the most active traveler. The girl approaches them, and the little demon asks if she's curious to know what it's about. Trembling with fear, she asks if this isn't a bit unfair since they had different physical stats. Unbothered, the creature says she doesn't need to be afraid because when they started, they didn't touch other people. Flying close to her, he says they don't kill just because they don't like travelers. With a scary face, he whispers in her ear that there will definitely be exceptions and that she could be one. However, after saying that, he starts laughing, saying he was just joking. Then he gets closer to her again to start explaining, saying that she looks great compared to the others and that she doesn't get rid of this appearance to be at the same level as the rest, concluding that life has always been unfair in some way. Turning back to Kang, he says he wasted time talking about useless things, and now we'll give him the present, though the hero already knows what the gift is in his mind. At that moment, the monster explains that the prize consists of having 3 runes of his choice. Snapping his fingers, he asks which rune he desires, suggesting a few. Showing one in front of him, he explains that although they are consumable, they can heal a hole in the stomach and most poisons, and Hanzo thinks it's useless when a limb is torn off. Surprising the group, they realize it's a healing rune. Starting to speak, the 3 members think only about the idea of the hero using the rune on one of them in case something goes wrong. However, he asks if there is a rune that grants immunity to magic. Smiling, the monster responds that there is. While in the background, his group feels disappointed by his choice. Analyzing his options, he thinks healing runes are good, but on the other hand, it's difficult to obtain both magical and physical immunity during the tutorial. Increasing resistance only affects recovery speed, but physical and magical resistance works as a more essential immunity. Thoughtful, he understands that he can compensate for physical attacks up to a certain level using his experience, but magical attacks are a different matter. Choosing the magic immunity rune, his magical immunity is now at 13 points, and he thinks that should be enough for now. After the choice, the little demon opens a rift in the air and bids farewell. Surprisingly, the little creature calls the hero Handsome Appa, leaving the whole group in shock, realizing that this monster is actually a girl. Turning to his group, he tells them to move on. Seeing their faces, he asks what happened, and still perplexed, they respond that it's nothing. Sometime later, already on the 3rd floor, the girl finishes killing another one of the mermaids. Sighing in exhaustion, she thinks it's easier now than before. While picking up her rune, she analyzes Kang, trying to understand what he's doing, wondering if it's poison again. Looking more closely, she questions if these are the same movements as before. Getting closer, she says he has many runes and asks why his speed is still the same. So the hero realizes she has sharp eyes, showing his arm with some sort of writing on his wrist. He says that's the reason. Curious, the girl asks what that is on his arm. Starting to explain, he says they can accumulate runes this way, telling her to stretch out her hands while thinking about the rune collection. Surprised, she asks how he knows this, and he replies that it's because of his superpower. She even wanted to try, but the boy says it's no use copying him, because it delays hunting since she won't be able to always carry many runes. Besides, those runes won't matter if a person dies, and all the runes he collects this way will drop if he dies. Then the emo asks why he's gathering the runes in this way. Kang replies that the reason is so he can negotiate, and that although it's difficult to do so now, once the rules are established, they can be used as money in the tutorial zone, and tells them to take one at a time. Irritated, the blonde asks how the hero can belittle the group and why he can't do the same. Looking back, he thinks these people still don't realize the situation they're in, but they'll get the picture when they descend and start cursing. As he picks up his dagger, he thinks that before that they need to do a general review. Then he calls out to his group. With his hands in his pockets, he explains that even if they follow or collect, each person can do what they want. Throwing the dagger on the ground, He says that instead, he needs everyone to listen to him. Acting like a leader, he orders them to hand over their weapons. Confused, the blonde asks if the guy thinks he's a thief and says he already has a weapon to use. However, the protagonist responds that he can't fight with it because the blade is already worn out. Very irritated, he questions the hero, calling him a bastard and ridiculous, and he asks how they can fight if he takes everything. Then he asks what the hero wants the group to do. Young says he'll hand over his weapon since it's the only way. Cutting him off, Tae-sung yells at him to stay quiet. Turning around, he faces Kang, who asks if he wants to fight with the guy down below. Angry, he says yes, asking if there's something to fear down there, and says he's always hated the protagonist's condescending look. Ignoring the blonde, he thinks he would have expected the bully to say no, but realizes he doesn't know what's down below. Changing his expression, he thinks it's now that he'll draw the line. Raising his finger, he says he'll give them two options, the first being that he stays out and the group moves on by themselves. The second option is that the group stays out of it and watches him capture it alone. After giving the options, he asks what they want to do. With his hand on his arm, Sung says he'll stay out of it. Yumi says she'll do the same, because the way he's talking must be very dangerous. Speaking to the girl, Tae-sung says that's exactly why they should fight together, to help each other. He continues saying that the sly guy wants to leave his friends behind and take all the rewards for himself, thinking that he doesn't care, saying Jin stays out, but if Mi leaves, he'll be in trouble. Looking to the side, the hero thinks that friend is a good word, but that you should be glad Keldeon didn't come back with them, because at this point, he'd probably be wandering alone in the indigo or purple zone and thinks that he can't stop here. He needs to get there as soon as possible. Cutting off the entire discussion, he says to think about it down below, and that he wouldn't have said anything if the group was capable of fighting. Excited, Tae says he should have said that earlier, and in his mind asserts that the sly guy must know something about what's down below, and that only a fool would let an opportunity like this pass. Sometime later, the three are running for their lives. The girl says she warned them it would be dangerous, and the blonde says whatever, he doesn't care anymore. Going back a little in time, they had just descended to the next floor. The group sees a giant snake, which is actually a monster from a completely different dimension. The three flee, and looking back, Tae can't believe the sly guy is going to fight alone, thinking he's crazy. Kang is facing the snake. Both are standing face to face. It's enormous and preparing its attack. At that moment, the protagonist also prepares. Hiding behind a pillar, he puts his hand over his ear because the snake is about to attack. As predicted, it releases a powerful red energy beam. It hits the front of the pillar. The beam destroys a large part of it. Analyzing the situation, Han Suman expected this and endured it due to his magical resistance. His opponent has powerful shockwaves that use magic. In addition, his scale is tough enough that no sword can cut through. With a murderous aura, it watches, striking the pillar again, but this time with its tail. Dodging, the hero thinks this isn't an easy opponent. However, he knows its weakness. Then he jumps toward the monster while holding a knife. Hitting the monster with a blade, he says he knows the scales are tough, but the space between them is more fragile. After landing the blow, the snake writhes in pain. Leaving the knife embedded in it, the hero steps back. After feeling the hit, the snake becomes even more enraged, slamming the ground with its hard tail, forcing Kang to dodge. From above, it observes its opponent, who must be only 10% of its size. Quickly, it launches another shockwave while the protagonist just covers his ears. After that, he begins to open his eyes. Something is coming toward him. It's the snake's tail, which hits him with such force that it throws his body far away, causing the wall to crack. Leaning against the wall and all bruised, he says that it's finally reacting now. The snake is still furious from the hit it took. Where he is, it's a tutorial zone, so even with high physical resistance, he ends up being vulnerable to poison. Focused on the objective, he thinks he still has 5 blades left. With a murderous look, he prepares to attack. Jumping toward the giant monster, he tells them to have a little fun until it takes effect. Meanwhile, the girl hears some sound. Looking toward the corridor, she thinks they're pretty far away, but even so, the sounds echo all the way here. Frightened, she wonders if Hansu will be okay since he's all alone. Tai asks the girl why she stopped, saying they don't have any daggers, and that's why they need to run back to the convenience store. Nervous about the situation, she just stays silent. Heading in the opposite direction, she says she needs to go check, but the boy calls her attention. Deeply irritated, the blonde thinks that everyone has been ignoring him since they arrived in this place. In response, he runs after her, saying he doesn't care. The three of them start running, heading back the way they came. When they get down there, Mi calls for Hansu, asking if he's okay, but she gets scared of what she sees. The snake is biting the protagonist's arm. He seems to be in trouble, and the girl screams his name. The three on the stairs watch the hero's situation. While his arm is being crushed, Kang thinks he's stalled for too long. Then, he grabs his small knife, attacking the snake's mouth. It reacts, screaming in pain, and at that moment, it releases Hansu's arm. He stands up in front of the monster. Seeing it tremble and writhe in even more agony, he thinks it was great because he managed to hit 3 spots and that it left a nasty bite on his arm. Since he managed to recover his stamina, he'll heal soon. In the future, some races begin to demonstrate increased resistance and healing abilities due to their evolved characteristics. Because of this, poisons would become ineffective. Additionally, using powers and other skills would be even more challenging. But in any case, the prior poisoning turned out to be offensive and effective, and he wouldn't have come this far without the paralysis venom. The snake is lying on the ground, practically defeated, and he thinks now everything is easier. In the background, his group arrives and the girl asks if he's okay. Walking toward him, he seems surprised that they are still there. A bit scared, the girl says she came because she was worried and asks how the hero's arm is. He responds that it's just a scratch and that it's already healing, so she doesn't need to worry. In shock, Ta can't believe that Kang defeated that giant snake alone. Paralyzed, he thinks he always knew the sly guy was strong, but not that strong, wondering if he'll ever be able to catch up. Kneeling near the monster, Hansu looks confused. The girl asks if there's a problem. Holding the snake's shockwave rune, he thinks that this must be the reward because the monster is very powerful. Then he thinks it would be very useful if he has the magic rune, and that because of that, he can't activate this rune yet. With his arms crossed, the blonde says he's a little jealous, but Kang cuts him off saying he's not going to use it. Knowing that he can only use 7 abilities, he understands it's impossible to maintain something like that. Intervening in the conversation, Sang-jin asks if he can use the rune, which surprises the blonde. Elbowing his companion, Ta says he won't be able to handle it, and that if a hero is going to pass it on to anyone, it should be to him. Nervous, the emo boy tells the bully that he already has one. Annoyed, he asks if it makes any sense for the emo to use it, since he was just hiding behind him a few minutes ago. Sang-jin responds that if he has something like that, he'll be even better than the blonde, and this irritates Ta, who says that he still hasn't taken enough beings. Watching the two argue, Kang questions what they are doing. He explains that he's going to sell it, giving a 5% discount to whoever buys it now. Hearing this, they stop fighting. Tai asks if he can pay in installments, and Hansu replies that he can only if he has a guarantor, as that way they can help each other. Sometime later, he asks if they've decided. The girl says she will take it, and in his mind, the protagonist thinks that with the level of trust there is, it would only end up going to her. Besides, he noticed that the girl consumed a magic rune earlier, and that she had nothing to hide, as it was a reward for defeating a monster. It's not uncommon, because the more cards you have up your sleeve, the better, and he wonders if she has any survival instincts. Walking toward the hero, she says she has an agility rune, 3 sense runes, 7 strength runes, and 7 stamina runes. In response, the boy says he promised a 5% discount, so he will take only 6 strength runes. Happy, the girl says he's very fair. However, Kang tells her that if she gets into the habit of getting things for free in this place, one day she might end up dead. He concludes by saying that there's no such thing as a deal without a price in this world. Walking away, he thinks that from now on, he hopes they put in some effort. Walking near some crystals, he remembers that when there's a scaled snake, it means there's nearby. Seeing one of them, he says he's been lucky. Then he breaks off a piece of Zooterium. From a distance, they think the hero is using his superpower again. The emo wonders if it's actually a hole puncher and a needle, while the girl thinks that despite its metallic appearance, it seems soft. Quickly, a protagonist steps away, piercing the snake's scales once again. Amazed, the two wonder what he plans to create this time, and in the background, Tae asks what they're doing. With the parts of the snake on the ground, someone in the group says it doesn't look very good. Tae asks if he's going to make poison again, and Kang explains that he's not. It's going to be something different, because although snake scales are very strong, they're not strong enough to be used as a weapon, so they need to be creative. This is the 11th tutorial out of 134 combinations of weapons that can be made using monsters and other things. The needle has a limited area of effect, so secondary damage like bleeding is harder to inflict. However, it helps you identify the weaknesses of your enemies with more precision, and if you have enough confidence in your abilities to hit the exact point with the needle, the skill becomes perfect. With the needle being made, he mentions that the tip is a bit dull, but he made it with his own hands because he had no other choice. Quickly, he starts sharpening it with a knife. Happy, he says that it needs at least this level of energy. Considering the time alchemists take to refine their combinations, this is the best weapon that could be made in the beginning, stating that this is what needs to be done to break the defense of a monster that he needs to defeat to obtain the second hidden piece. piece. After this whole process, he begins wrapping a cloth around the handle. Proudly, he affirms that this weapon finally seems usable. Then he says he could have created a stronger weapon, but with these materials, this was the best option he had. Tae is astonished by the protagonist's knowledge. Walking toward him, he asks if he would sell it, and says he's willing to give all his runes for it. Thinking quickly, he knows the effort the sly guy put into creating it, and therefore, this weapon is worth more than his current one. However, Kang says that it's complicated to use this weapon, and that he would sell it, but he can't make another one because he used up all the available material. Irritated, he thinks that the hero used everything for his own benefit in the end. Scratching his head, he thinks it's okay since there will be more good things ahead. However, this seems like the group's final destination. Since there's electricity and the subway is clean besides, the hero seems too calm now for someone who is always ready for combat. Therefore, it doesn't seem like there will be more fights ahead, leaving only the option to enjoy the rewards. The three head to the train when Hanzo questions why they're boarding. Tai asks what he means, and Kang replies that only one person can fit here. He reiterates that only one person can board, so they need to get off. Sang-jin says he could be wrong, because it's very spacious, and asks how he knows it's made for just one person. Super irritated, Tae questions when it was decided that only he would board, and asks why he feels entitled to do so, concluding that he only got to this place with the help of the group. At this moment, Kang turns to the three. Seeing his group, he thinks they're idiots, and although it's important to seize every opportunity, there's something they haven't realized. Responding, he says the blonde is right, and there's no rule stating that he has to go first. Striking his weapon on the ground, he asserts that there are no rules in this world. Giving them a chance, he says they can leave now or resolve this in a less friendly way. Pointing his weapon at the group, he says they can cry their lawyer later and file a complaint. Smiling arrogantly, he says the decision is theirs. Afraid, the blonde just watches the weapon near his neck. The train starts moving and the three are left outside watching. Tae is irritated by what happened. Bothered, he wonders if he really meant what he said. Going back in time a little, he thinks that if the three attack together, they might have a chance, and if they win, he'll take Kang's weapons and runes. Preparing for combat, he thinks that if they lose, they can just apologize, and Kang wouldn't kill them. However, Tae is startled by something, seeing the protagonist in front of him, with a very terrifying look. In his mind, he thinks that if he had moved even a little, he would have been killed quickly, affirming that the hero is capable of much more than that. Back in the present, he wonders how he could have frozen just from being stared at. The girl says they shouldn't have insisted so much, explaining that they got here because of him, and they shouldn't have provoked him like that, saying that they should move on. However, the blonde thinks that's why they never get anywhere, and that they should have used force. With a murderous aura, he asserts that the goal is to get stronger, no matter what, certain that he's going to become stronger. Alone in the wagon, Kang reflects on the information he's gathered so far. The subway will make stops at 20 stations throughout the journey. At each station, it's possible to find a random artifact. Once you pass a station, there's no going back. The structure is designed to cause mental confusion. And even after reaching the end, there's no guarantee that the result will be good, so he needs to be cautious. Then he realizes he's already at the 12th station. So far, he's collected 8 weapons, including Larune's crown, Kittle's claws, Abrang's metal glove, among others. These are weapons you can get by using one of the hidden pieces, and perhaps that's why they are of such great quality. Larune's crown, combined with Sen's stats, helps reveal the weaknesses of various monsters for a certain time. However, the protagonist can already visualize the weakness of all monsters, making this weapon useless to him. Having enough weapons, he hopes to find something different, like an object that increases his mobility. With that, he can move more swiftly during battles. Suddenly, Kang notices something. Stealing the random artifact from the station, he realizes it's the Manic Mist cigarette. Surprise, he didn't know this was one of the available items. When you place one of these in your mouth, the status of runes begins to increase, and the status grows as you keep smoking. If you finish the cigarette and inhale the smoke, the status of all runes increases by 20%, and the effect lasts 10 minutes. With the artifact in hand, Hansu feels excited. Holding the pack of cigarettes, he states that it's useless outside the beginner's zone, but for now, there's nothing better than this. Seeing this pack of cigarettes, memories surface. A blonde woman asks if he's smoking like before, and that the more he smokes, the older he looks. With long hair, the protagonist remains silent. He's looking at the woman, and both are wearing similar outfits. Continuing her scolding, she says cigarettes don't suit him, and that he'll ruin his pretty face if he keeps smoking. Back in the present, Kang says that this time, it will be different. Sometime later, Hansu returns to the station where he was. Getting off the subway, he realizes his group has already left. Walking around, he thinks there are still 4 days left before the next hidden piece appears. So for 2 days, he has only 2 options. The first is to focus on hunting and collecting runes, and the second is to try to complete the available missions. Quickly, he asserts there's no reason to think twice. Looking at the pot, he says he completed some missions a while ago, but he doesn't know what items he'll get, and that he needs to focus on the missions with the best rewards. Among the remaining missions, one has a good reward and a quick completion time. The reward is a Sage's Stone, with a clumsy wizard as a follower. Its completion increases all stats by 10, and heals wounds that could be fatal. He concludes that reward is impressive and extremely rare both during and after the tutorial. Then he remembers the origin of this crazy mission. Anviarin is a member of the Death Squad who was dragged to this place as a volunteer in a prison. From what he's heard, the people she trusted the most were always with her. However, as soon as it all started, she was betrayed, and her fury awakened her powers. For 7 days, she mercilessly killed everyone in the place. After this event, she sought to end her own life, and thus the mission began. Remembering this, he thinks he should skip this mission as it conflicts with his goal of saving whoever he can. Knowing Meg is approaching, he decides to find the mission that takes the least time, and realizes there is one. The reward is the selfish man's food pouch, so he decides to do that mission first. But before anything, he needs to make sure he has enough stamina, and will focus on ensuring that tonight. Arriving at an empty diner, he wonders if he should eat first. Sometime after eating, he sees a hole in the ground, already knowing who made it. He says the moon will rise soon, and yet they had the audacity to do this. Excited, he decides to test their courage. Meanwhile, in the center of a city, some men are packing something. Watching from afar is the group from earlier, wondering how these people could steal everything. A girl complains that they were in such a hurry to flee that she couldn't save anything, questioning how they could steal everything, including from her. Nervous, Mi says her group might be strong, but there's a problem. The emo continues, saying there are many, and Hanzo hasn't returned yet, so they shouldn't act rashly. Two young people whisper that they've never heard the emo talk so much. Pensive, Mi can't believe they found the convenience store and thought she had more time. The group of thieves begins to hurry. Sun-ho is with them and waves at the youngsters. The group then notices the eye contact. The blonde asks if he just waved, and Tad explains that they're trying to provoke them. He says they don't need to respond and should just leave. Walking away, he says they need to find more supplies elsewhere. However, deep down he's irritated, wondering why that guy waved since he's been doing a good job. Going back in time, Tad approached the group of thieves, saying that since they needed food, they should try the subway. Revealing himself as a traitor, the blonde says he'll show them the way to the subway so they can take everything. The plan is to make Hanzo fright these guys for the food and ask for his help since there are too many of them. Sun-ho asks why he should trust him, and says he must be plotting something with Hanzo. The blonde grabs the guy by the shirt, telling him to follow him. Irritated, Sun questions if he doesn't know how much his brother helped him, but a fist comes close to his face. Tad ends up landing a hard punch on his face, throwing the man to the ground. With a frightening look, he says the three of them are weaklings and he wouldn't trick them. Bleeding from the nose, the man just listens. He continues, telling them to think about it because it's an opportunity. Back in the present, the five are gathered in a house. The girl sees Hanzo and calls out to him. Relieved, she thinks he just came back, and that alone makes her feel more at ease. Happy, the blonde thinks there's no way to know it was him, so there's no need to be nervous. Even if they find out it was him, he can just make up some story. Mihi says that when they were behind Jizun and Young Yu, the guys took everything from the store, and Kang says he already knows. Then he asks how much food they have left. She responds that they don't have much, and that they tried to take as much as possible. Intervening in the conversation, Tai says it just happened, and now they can just steal everything back, saying that it'll be hard for Hanzo to fight all of them alone. Kang replies that they should eat first. Irritated by the response, the blonde questions if he's mocking him. Slamming the table, he says it doesn't seem fair, asking the hero if he's not ashamed, because the group risked their lives for this food, so we should offer something of equal value. Then he presses, telling him to say something, and if he gives something good, he'll think about it. Nervous, the girl says they brought food for everyone, but he questions if they should just give it for free to the sly guy, because the group risked their lives for it, so they should charge. And that Hanzo didn't lift a finger to help with it, and someone once said there should be charity. Hearing all this, Jizun and Young Yu remain silent. With a smile on his face, he thinks that if he brings everyone to his side, he'll get rid of this guy, wanting to see how long he'll act this way. However, the protagonist simply says it's a pity because he can't give anything in return and asks how he can make it work. The blonde says he must have plenty of stuff and asks him to share it with the group. In the background, the blonde girl asks what he's talking about. Tae replies that Kang entered his secret place and must have found something good there. Smiling, he says he should share it with the group since they're all going to be traveling together. Offering a cereal bar, he tells them to stop fighting over silly things. Hanzo just observes his attitude. With his arms crossed, he responds that Tai has learned well, and Tai tells him not to change the subject. Standing up from the chair, he thinks the blonde wasn't subtle, but that makes sense since he sees the hero as an equal. But he thinks that's not the problem, and that he's not staying with them because he needs the group as their runes won't make a difference. As he walks away, the blonde asks where he's going. In his mind, Kang thinks he came because of errors, and that he did what he could. Suddenly, he remembers how Kang Tae acts, and then he can't imagine himself saying that because it's too cringe. Leaving, he tells them to take care and stay in the shade. Seeing this, he and Sang-jin get nervous. The blonde girl intervenes, saying they shouldn't fight, and that they've made it this far without meeting that. Looking back, she invites Mei to bring Hanzo back, but Tai says if the guy wants to leave, fine, and there's no reason to stop him. As he watches the hero walk away, he thinks that he remained arrogant until the end. He continues saying that if they give him something, the sly guy will come back, and that they don't need him. Turning around, he asks Mei what she's doing, asking if she's going to chase after that crazy guy. Approaching the protagonist, she says she's going with him and asks if she can come along. Nervous, she waits for his response. Answering, he says he can't take her with him. She says she understands that. However, Kang tells her once again that the decision to follow him is hers. This response makes the girl excited, but someone approaches from behind them. It's Todd, who says she still hasn't taken her runes from Sang-jin, and in his mind, he thinks he can't let her leave. Sang-jin speaks up, saying it's not a problem, because he's also decided to go with them. Surprised, the blonde puts a hand on his shoulder and asks if he's sure about what he just said. He questions if Sang thinks his father will go easy on his. He continues saying he accepted the boy when he was nothing and asks if he's forgotten everything. Nervous, the emo asks what the blonde's father will do. He explains that they're stuck in this place and asks how he plans to tell his father. He concludes that none of this matters anymore because there's no reason to keep listening to the bully like before. As Sang-jin walks away, the blonde is left in shock. Furious, he yells that they can go since the food is theirs anyway, and questions if anything will change if they walk to another place. Consumed by rage, he says that in the end, they'll come crawling back. Sometime later, the trio walks through the empty streets. Sang-jin asks if they should have brought more food, as they don't have much in their backpacks. The girl agrees, while Kang observes a jacket. Putting on the new jacket, he asserts that it wouldn't have made sense. This statement leaves the two quite confused. Feeling great with the new jacket, he says they need to do something and that they should hurry. Nervous, the emo questions what this guy is thinking, because Hanzo has the power to do whatever he wants, and if he causes trouble, it won't be worth it. At the same time, Kang affirms that he knows what he's thinking. However, he doesn't judge him since the emo knows nothing about the moon. Breaking the tension, the hero warns that it's almost midnight. Looking up, she asks what that means. Then she realizes something strange. Confused, she points and asks if something's wrong with the moon. The moon appears normal at first glance. However, a bizarre eye has formed within it. It's a giant eye that seems alien. In shock, the girl asks if the moon really opened its eye. Also frightened, Sang asks what's going on, because his food just turned into sand for no apparent reason. Worried, the girl checks her bag to see if it happened to all their food. Opening the bag, she realizes that everything they've brought has turned to sand. Nervous, the emo asks about the glowing light he's seeing. Realizing it's people, he says that their hiding places are being exposed. The girl asks if they're glowing too, and the emo theorizes that they can't see who's nearby, but she's shocked to see humans glowing even through walls. Understanding that they can now see where everyone is, and that this basically forces them to fight each other. Sang then asks the group leader if he knew about this. Smiling, Kang says that even with superpowers, he didn't know about it. But the emo thinks the hero's reaction wasn't that of someone unaware. Humans are fighting, accusing each other of stealing their food, blaming one another, and even threatening to kill. Some demand others hand over all their food in a desperate act. Hearing all of this, Kang thinks that this world is truly horrible, and he explains that the reason he told them not to take everything is that as long as this moon which only exists in this world is above them, all the people's food will completely disappear. At that moment, Hansu begins to walk, and the emo asks where he's going. Responding, he says he needs to do what has to be done. Meanwhile, the other group is in shock as all their food has turned to sand. The blonde girl asks what they can do now, and if they should search for more food somewhere else. Her companion says that they've already taken all the food from the store, and the blonde thinks that the sly guy already knew this would happen. Irritated, he questions if the hero tricked him. Frightened, the blonde girl calls out to Tae-sung, telling him to look outside. In the center, several people are glowing. It's those bullies, and Sungho thinks Tae tricked him and starts looking for the bully. Watching through the window, the blonde thinks they don't stand a chance against this group. Suddenly, the girl says they should follow Hansu. Bringing her face closer, she questions if she really wants them to go back to the person who abandoned them. Shouting, she asks what they can do, saying that standing still won't solve anything. Continuing, she says that if they can't find them, they'll go after Hansu and offer their help that way. Her companion agrees, saying that this way they can make peace. Reluctantly, Tae thinks they're right, as a temporary alliance makes sense. Even though he doesn't like it, he sees this as a chance to make Kangohan one. He then says they're right, and they should help the group. Heading outside, he tells them to stay quiet and just follow him. However, something catches on his leg. It causes the bully to fall to the ground. Trying to remove it, he realizes this thing is stuck to his legs. Lying on the ground, he asks for help. Someone approaches, questioning if they'll be okay dragging the blonde along with them. Sanho's leader asks them to come closer, saying he needs to have a little chat. At that moment, the two begin to feel scared. Quickly, they both flee the scene, abandoning the blonde on the ground. Squatting down, the gang leader says Tae is still too young to speak that way. He then explains that this thing is called Oren's flight paper, saying that while Tae was making his plans, they were making theirs too. Standing up, he says that enough small talk. He then questions why only 3 members of the group are here and asks where the others are. Suddenly, he prepares to step on the bully, leaving Tae terrified by the situation. However, the man only stomped on the ground, and with his strength, he ended up breaking it. Troubling with fear, Tae-sung says he'll tell them everything, and that he knows where the others went. The bald man says he catches on quickly, but adds that someone else wants to have a word with him first, saying that they'll leave after this is settled. Sangho approaches, saying he won't feel satisfied until he gets his revenge. Irritated, the blonde thinks it could have been different if he hadn't been abandoned. With a maniacal expression, the man says that he'll be gentle with the beating they're about to give. Several members of the group start kicking the bully, while he thinks about how he couldn't have been abandoned like this, saying that he'll kill the two of them. Elsewhere, the two are confused by something. A meal is being cooked in a pot. They both wonder how the 3 can be in this place, as if they're on a camping trip. Nervous, the girl thinks they should have known that the food would disappear. Approaching, she says she arrived just in time and tells them to eat together. After hearing this, the hero begins to stand up. In an instant, he makes a huge dent in the ground with his weapon. The girl is shocked. Chewing on food, he tells her not to cross that line. Irritated, she asks why he's being so childish and says it's Ta's fault. Curious, she asks what he'll do if they cross the line. Smiling, the boy says that based on his power, it won't end well for the two of them. The boy, who had been silent until now, says that this says many things. Responding sharply, Kang says yes, and that right now it will be dangerous with the two of them here. Looking back, they're surprised. The bald man's gang has already arrived. With an arrogant expression, the leader just watches. Kang and Mi stand still. The protagonist looks serious, while the girl is nervous. She doesn't know what the hero will do at this moment, but she's expecting something. This is the selfish glutton's meal. The conditions to obtain it are simple. First, you must cook and eat as much food as possible while the move shines. This condition seems simple, but there's another one. You must be a selfish person, someone who doesn't share food with anyone in order to eat as much as possible alone, with the goal of being the only one to earn this reward. While everyone else scrambles for supplies and food in desperation, they must overcome all obstacles and consume the food savagely. Whoever created this mission clearly has a peculiar sense of humor. Even with all this, the person must remain calm. The protagonist is eating when someone approaches. It's Tae-sung, who's all beaten up and injured. The blonde girl asks if he's okay. Irritated, the bully curses at her, asking how she could abandon him, but she responds that they came to ask for help. Furious, he says that's a lie, and if she hadn't run away, he could have done something. Someone in the background tells him to calm down. Placing a hand on his shoulder, the man tells the rookie to relax a bit. The man then asks Hansu, acknowledging his skill, where he found that meat. Confused, Kang replies that there's meat everywhere and asks if the man doesn't actually know what meat is. The 3 look disgusted, wondering if he really ate that. In his mind, Kang notes that they've already tested this, and those who ate the meat are suffering from dehydration due to its toxicity, yet the protagonist is eating it as if it were a regular steak. Curious, the man remarks that Kang must have figured out how to eat it safely, to which Kang responds that you just need to boil it in goblin blood. Surprised, the bald man pauses. Tae had mentioned that Kang has superpowers, and that this superpower helped him secure a valuable item at the station. He considers that today might be the perfect day to fight him. Tae admits Kang might be skilled, but he has the disadvantage of being outnumbered, and is just a 20-year-old kid. He might have experience fighting monsters, but that doesn't mean he'll be able to kill people. At that moment, Tae questions what the rookie is doing. He tells him to go eat and chat with his friend. Nervous, the blonde asks why he has to be friends with that sly guy, but that agrees it's best not to cause trouble in front of so many people. Suddenly, Hansu begins to stand up. Tai says the man has a point and suggests they have a talk. Worried, the girl yells for him not to cross that line. Continuing to approach, the blonde says she's just like that other girl. Wielding his weapon, the hero says it looks like it's going to go this way. Launching his strike toward the bully's ankle, he silently hopes Ares won't be mad at him. At that moment, Tae doesn't even know what's happening. Then he begins to fall to the ground. Lying on the ground, he starts questioning why. He begins screaming in pain, realizing he's missing one of his legs. At this moment, he yells, asking how Kang could do this and calls him crazy. His companions are horrified by the scene. Mi limits the situation, while Tai continues cursing, furious that Kang did this just over a piece of meat. Watching this unfold, the emo can't believe it. Desperate, he says the group needs to think carefully, because Kang will only get stronger and more dangerous. He says Kang will kill them all to take their runes. He concludes that they need to kill him now as they won't stand a chance if they wait. Nervous, the bald leader orders everyone to prepare. Sang-ho agrees, thinking that now is the time to fight before Kang becomes more powerful. Confident, he knows the gang has their weapons, and with their bodies glowing under the moonlight, Kang won't be able to escape. In shock, he wonders how a college student could have that look in his eyes and questions what kind of life he's lived. Amidst all this, the hero simply watches. He remembers that Ares and Keldion used to argue even after joining forces. Ares would warn Hansu not to go around making enemies, but Keldion would insist that if an enemy was in front of him, he should crush them, because if didn't, the enemy would come back to haunt him. Smiling, Kang thinks that both he and Ares agree with that philosophy. Then he raises his arm, showing 3 of his runes, thinking that if they're going to do this, they won't leave a single hair intact. The entire gang rushes toward him, shouting to finish him off. In response, Kang tightens his fist firmly. He prepares to attack now. Quickly, he uses such a powerful boost that the ground beneath him shatters. Charging toward the gang, he says he'll test the mission's reward on them. Frightened, Sang-ho wonders how Kang can move like that. The hero lends a precise blow on the man who thinks this is going to hurt. With the impact, he's sent flying. Quickly, the protagonist moves to another spot, defeating one person after another while the bald leader can only watch. Scared, he wonders if Kang managed to absorb all the runes he had. He then orders his men not to flee, saying they just need to use their advantage. Suddenly, the hero appears in front of him. Irritated, the man says he won't surrender. Walking toward him, Kang suggests he think carefully. Terrified, the bald man asks if Kang thinks he can live with the weight of killing someone. He insists that what Kang is doing is murder. He concludes that this isn't something a kid like him will be ready to handle. Ignoring a man, the hero gets closer. Charging forward with his weapon, Kang unleashes a series of strikes on the bald man, making him fall to the ground as Kang watches from above. With a sharp and cold gaze, he just stares at the man already lying on the ground. All the thugs lie on the ground, gravely injured. The blonde and her companion look on in horror at the scene. With his weapon still embedded in one of the men, Kang asks since they're here if it means they still want to fight. The two exchange fearful glances, deciding to flee without saying a word. After the battle, the protagonist heads toward his group. He resumes eating as if nothing happened. Chewing on the monster meat, he asks if anything happened and thinks to himself that he won't share the food. Awkwardly, Minnie says it's nothing. The 3 of them gather near the bodies of the gang members. The next day in the city, dawn is breaking, but the moon with the eye remains in the sky. However, it begins to close. Quickly, the eye of the moon shuts completely. As Kang walks, he thinks he's eaten enough to last nearly 3 days. He failed all the missions that involved people, but by obtaining this item, everything was a success, because it protects food from the moon's light and preserves it in a subspace where he can store anything. It can be used 5 times, providing food for almost 2 weeks. As they walk, No one speaks. However, the girl asks if everything is okay, saying that he didn't kill the thugs. The hero stops walking. Sighing, he says she's a scary woman. Irritated, she retorts that she's not, and that she was just worried about him. The girl thinks it's not surprising he didn't kill them, since none of those men stood a chance against him. She figures there's no need to worry about the others, because Kang can become even stronger. Thoughtful, the protagonist realizes that Minnie has perfectly adapted to this place, and that he could too if his goal was simply to get stronger. However, he came back to the past with the aim of saving as many humans as he can, minimizing conflicts, and, with that in mind, the most important task of all is establishing the rules of this world. The first requirement for that is to not kill any humans to take their runes. Hanzo could do that to use the few runes people have, but in doing so, he wouldn't be able to balance the contribution. Even though it's difficult to enforce these rules now, it's more effective when established by someone powerful, affirming that a specific cleansing is necessary, but there are many people watching everything. However, that's not a concern, because someone will stumble upon the runes at some point. Sang-jin speaks up, saying he's going to stop for now, and the girl asks what he means. Nervously, the boy says he doesn't think he can continue with him. Worried, she asks why now, and Kang says he can do whatever he wants. Respecting individual choices, turning his back after hearing the response, the emo starts to walk away. Hanzo asks why he doesn't do what he truly wants to do. He approaches Minnie, asking if she's afraid of him. The girl is surprised by the question. Looking away, she thinks that she's afraid. However, she just needs to be careful not to cross any lines. Nervous, she stays silent. Suddenly, she responds that if she leaves now, she won't be able to return later, and affirms that she'll stay with him as long as she can. Kang watches her after hearing the response, his gaze cold. Faced with this, Minnie becomes very nervous. He thinks she has great intuition. Smiling, the hero says that if that's the case, they should move on. Sometime later, the two begin descending into some underground area. Meanwhile, at the old battlefield within the city, lying on the ground, Tag calls the men useless, saying they only know how to bark, and that it would have been better if they had died. Then he says Kang hands Sue a mistake, because his minor wounds are already healing, and once he's fully healed, he'll kill them all and go after the protagonist. Crawling along the ground, he questions how they could have abandoned him, especially Minnie, but he stops crawling when he sees someone. It's Sang-jin, and Tao wonders why he's approaching now. However, he realizes this could be an opportunity. Excited, he asks Sang to help him up. The emo asks if Tai is talking to him, and irritated, the blonde asks if there's anyone else here and says they need to join forces, because this is also a chance for him to become stronger. In the background, the bald man mutters curses, and Tai says he's already at death's door. The blonde tells Sang to kill the bald guy first, while the boy approaches a knife, grabbing it eagerly. Tai says he did a good job, and as for the runes from killing the bald man, he'll give half to the emo. However, the blonde asks why Sang is coming toward him, but Sang grabs the bully by the collar. In shock, Tai asks what he's doing. Then Tao wonders when Sang-jin became so strong. Holding the bully, the emo says he should have done this a long time ago. Desperate, the blonde begs him to let go, but Sang just stares at him with a murderous look. Quickly, Sang stabs him with a knife. Writhing in pain, Tao starts cursing the emo. Grabbing his shirt, he demands to know how Sang dared to do this. Sang responds that the bully always told him to know his place, and now the blonde should know his own place, because he is nothing when he's alone. He questions if it was fun all this time, using his father's name to spout nonsense. On the verge of collapse, Tai continues swearing in disbelief. With a terrifying expression, the emo begins to laugh. Then he drops the knife on the ground, but quickly he starts vomiting. However, he thinks that he shouldn't grow weak over something as small as this, punching himself in the face while the blonde lies on the ground. Stealing the rune from his former companion, he thinks it's not meant for him. Quickly, he heads toward the bald man, who starts pleading, saying they can talk, and if Sang lets him live, they can join forces. Sang keeps walking while the bald man says they can become stronger together. As he walks, the emo says he now understands why Hanzo didn't come after him. Facing the bald man who's begging for his life, Sang questions how pathetic he must have seemed to the hero, saying he doesn't want his protection, and that all he ever wanted was the courage to fight by his side, because if he had decided to get stronger instead of cowering, he could have stood by his side. With 2 runes in hand, he thinks that if he hadn't been so weak, he wouldn't have been abandoned. That's why he hasn't changed since the past, when he used to shrink back walking on eggshells because of other people. But now it's different. Now he wants to prove his worth. With a cold gaze, he decides he will become stronger, aimed to reach Hanzo's level, and he thinks that if he uses these idiots to get to the same level, the hero of himself will see him differently. Elsewhere in the city, a few blackbirds are flying. Suddenly, they attack Minnie. The girl starts to take a deep breath. Using her ability, she lets out a supersonic scream, causing the animals to fall from the sky. Looking back, she notices something coming. It's a giant bird, which is quickly sliced by Kang's blade. Without hesitation, the hero saves his teammate. Awkwardly, the girl says that in the end, she needed his help again. But he replies that being independent and doing everything alone are two very different things. Handing her part of the kill, he explains that if an ability has weaknesses, the least she can do is ask for help from a teammate, telling her to carefully weigh the pros and cons of each ability she has. Checking her stats, she understands it's now the third day since they arrived here. Relieved, she thinks it was good to have bought abilities from Hanzo that increase magic and stamina to keep up with him. But regardless, she needs to learn not to depend on him. She sighs, frustrated with herself. Kang analyzes his stats and notices that his stamina is at 42. The best method is to keep attribute values balanced, and it wasn't hard to find what he needed because Minnie was lacking in both strength and stamina. Suddenly, the system contacts them, notifying them to return to the starting point immediately, and that anyone who's punished. Surprised, the girl realizes it's a fairy, and in the background, the protagonist calls her to go. A while later, the two are walking. She can't stop watching Kang along the way. Curious, he asks if she has something to say, and assures her there's no need to be afraid. Blushing, she says it's fine. Very nervous, she asks if he's dating anyone. Flustered, she wonders if she asked something too personal. In her mind, she tells herself she shouldn't think of him that way, but he seems too generous, so she can't afford to lose him. Fidgeting, she thinks she else, actually. With a disappointed expression, Kang thinks she seems a bit too strict but isn't worried about saying these things, and that Kang Ta would have loved to get this question, even if it was just small talk. He recalls how the girl was trembling so much she couldn't even speak. Thinking of his beloved, he knows she's just someone he hasn't met yet, and he can't lose her again. He then responds that he doesn't remember. This answer makes her even more nervous. The two continue walking in silence. After a while, they arrive at a place where many people are gathered. Kang says he recognizes many of them, but the atmosphere feels strange. Suddenly, the little monster appears. Asking if all the travelers are present, it says that, unfortunately, they gathered too quickly. It then gets straight to the point and says it has two pieces of good news. With a maniacal smile, the demon begins to speak. The first news is that if they survive for more than 3 days, it will leave this place. Cheerfully, it asks if that is incredible news and urges everyone to celebrate. However, everyone remains silent. This leaves the demon feeling awkward, and it asks if the cat got their tongues. Quickly, everyone starts clapping, and the demon says it's good they're happy. Waving a finger, it announces that now it will introduce the star of the event. It points to the palace they see, saying that this place will be the most important part of the event. This is the magic altar. Seeing the building, the girl is surprised and questions the name altar. Continuing the explanation, the demon says there's a little creature inside, a very cute one that's waiting for everyone. Opening its arms wide, it asks if they see it. Introducing the little creature, it says this is the carnivorous beast, and they haven't fed it for an entire day, which shocks the people. Then it says the creature is dying to get out and play a little. With a sadistic grin, it explains that while the altar may seem amazing, it's weak and will soon break. If this little creature escapes, how many will survive? People look around, wondering they'll have to face this monster if the altar breaks. Laughing, the demon says it's time for the second piece of good news. Lying on a pillow, it explains there's a way to make the beast sleep, and if it sleeps, it won't escape. Then it asks if anyone knows how to make it sleep, but everyone remains silent. Breaking the tension, it says these people are too boring. Changing its tone, it explains that the method is simple, and actually it's just 5 per day, explaining that they just need to sacrifice 5 people per day. Everyone is in shock, and the demon continues, saying there are only 3 days left, so they just need to feed it 3 times. 60 people will remain, and if they do this, a quarter of them will become the creature's dinner. The little monster says it's a take-it-or-leave-it situation, and for those who struggle, it shows something. A hologram of another monster appears. People are fleeing from it. The massive creature continues to devour them relentlessly. Unbothered, the demon explains that these are images from another tutorial zone where people decided to fight. At this, people start saying they have no chance against that thing, and that they have only one option. Then someone raises their hand. Nervously, they ask how they're supposed to choose the people. The demon replies with another question, asking how he's supposed to know. He explains that they could use rock, paper, scissors or fight it out. It doesn't matter because they just need to stay alive. Showing a timer, the demon says they only have 1 hour to decide. After that, they'll be safe for a day, and then they'll have another hour to choose the next sacrifices. It concludes by saying it hopes they make the right choice. Panic spreads as everyone starts shouting that they're going to die. Minnie looks at the protagonist and asks who he thinks they should do. Closing his eyes, he responds that the damage is already done. That man from earlier speaks up, saying they need to be fair. He suggests drawing lots to select 5 people for the first day, and then another 5 for the second. Smiling, someone asks why they should do that. Nervously, the man in the beanie looks behind him. The girl is surprised to see who it is. It's Sang-jin, who questions why they need to be fair. Someone asks what he means by that, and the boy repeats his statement. He's standing with the 2 people from before and questions again why they should be fair. The man says he can't do that when he doesn't even have a plan. Sang-jin asks who said he doesn't have a plan. Placing his hand on a post, he responds that his plan is simple. Instantly, he breaks the post using just his physical strength, startling many people around him. Revealing his plan, he says they'll start by finding the useless ones. With a frightening look, he says they'll sacrifice 5 useless people and asks what they think. The people around him are shocked. Looking at them, he thinks that everyone is focused on what he says, even though he only has one ability. Smiling, he thinks this is wonderful. He then says they can't overthink it, and that 100 people have already disappeared trying to fight the more experienced ones. He questions whether people understand that it will be difficult to do this alone. Perhaps everyone will have to fight as soon as they leave here, so they need to help each other. Looking at the man from before, he says they don't need useless people like him. Sang-jin, with a cold stare, asks if it's not obvious to sacrifice the weakest ones first. He then turns to Han-soo and asks what he thinks of this plan. In his mind, Sang-jin reflects that he's not the same anymore and wonders if Han-soo has noticed the change. He wants to help him as he has no intention of being his enemy, because even in this hell, he believes he can start over. But to do that, he needs Kang's help. Sang-jin is certain that Han-soo will agree with the idea, thinking it's the only option. However, Han-soo responds that it's not a bad method, but then says he has another idea, and if they follow it, everyone can survive without sacrificing anyone. This shocks everyone, including Sang-jin. Nervous, Sang wonders what this idea could be. The man in the red beanie speaks up, saying it's impossible for everyone to fight together, even if they have the numbers. There's no way to fight a monster that regenerates while devouring more people. Confused, the protagonist replies that no one said they had to fight. Frightened, the man asks what the plan is and if Han-soo is planning to fight alone. Exuberating confidence, Kang responds that yes, he will. This answer irritates the others. They question how he can fight that thing on his own. Suddenly another man speaks up, saying they're not fighting goblins, and if they don't defeat it within an hour, they'll all die. Pointing at the timer, he mentions they now have less than an hour left. In the background, Sang-jin remains silent. In his mind, he thinks he would have caught up to Han-soo by now. However, he's confronted with the protagonist's strength, which is already enough to face that giant monster. To his surprise, Han-soo mentions that he plans to fight the monster, but says it's going to be difficult, making Sang think he's asking for help. Excited, Sang asks if Han-soo is suggesting they fight together and that they can join forces. Annoyed, Kang says they never let him finish talking. This irritates Sang-jin, who becomes confused. He then asks what Han-soo's suggestion is. At that moment, many think he'll probably bring her along, but quickly realizes he would never do that. Finishing her thoughts, Kang says it's simple, explaining that if his strength and stamina increase by 30 each, he can fight the monster one-on-one. He then proposes something to the group if they give him their runes. Kang says he'll take responsibility and kill the monster. The people ask if only the ones chosen as sacrifices will give their runes, and if it, in his mind, Han-soo calculates that with strength and stamina at 100, agility and perception at 50, and using a Manic Mist cigarette, it will be possible. Having spent his entire life fighting in this place, he assumes the numbers will be the same, and if he does this, he'll get what he wants. The second hidden item in the chaos, something even Keldian, Ares, and Kang Ta couldn't obtain. The one who discovered it was the monarch of Clementine's wrath. Even with the perfect personality to succeed, he nearly died trying. So even if someone wants the hidden item, they need to become the strongest possible. Breaking the silence, Han-soo says it doesn't matter who gives the runes, and once he reaches the right numbers, he'll enter the altar immediately. He explains that delaying this won't help anyone. Nervous, the bald man says the weaklings will never have enough runes, and if they did, they'd be much stronger. Irritated, he demands the runes from the people and suggests they hold a lottery if they can't decide. However, someone calls him selfish, catching his attention, and he angrily asks what they said. A muscular man with long hair speaks up, saying the bald guy would be the first to be thrown on the altar if they were following the weakest first rule, questioning why they should give up their runes. he explains that the gap between the first and last place is huge. Staring down the bald man, he asks if the reason is that he has too few runes. Smiling, he says it's obvious the bald man is weak and would only try to run away. Irritated, the bald man demands to know who the muscular man thinks he is to talk to him like that, but the long-haired man warns him not to show his claws or he'll break every bone in his body. Frightened, the bald man asks if everything comes down to strength for him, saying that he can't even respect his elders. He then questions if they don't live in a democracy. As the muscular man approaches, he agrees, saying that's true, so they should vote. He tells the bald man to either hand over his runes and live another day, or offer himself as a sacrifice, and that the vote will be secret, asking what the old man thinks. Kang steps closer to the bald man. Nervous, the older man says that Kang is strong and could easily take the runes from the muscular guy. He then suggests killing some of the stronger people, but before he can finish his sentence, someone punches him, asking if he wants to die. The man in the red beanie delivers the punch, and the old man responds that he doesn't want to die because he has a family. Then someone suggests throwing the old man in first because if the monster isn't satisfied, everyone will die. At that moment, Kang sighs, watching the chaos unfold. He thinks to himself that they never learned to retreat. Soon enough, they'll need to address this problem. As everyone argues and fights, Hansu calls for silence. Extending his hand, he explains the options they have. He tells them they have 5 options in total, and this is the ranking of the weakest here. In the background, someone exclaims that this is impossible. People shout, asking if Kang is suggesting they all sacrifice themselves. They curse at him while the hero simply smiles, exuding confidence. Time passes, and now less than 30 minutes remain before the event begins. Minnie stands alone in front of the altar, staring at it, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, Sang-jin appears, telling her that if she's going to act like this, she should go with him. He says Kang might allow her to join him. Blushing, she asks if he even knows how Hansu operates. The emo becomes frustrated with this response. The girl admits she wanted to go with Hansu, yes, but she can't just follow him aimlessly. At that moment, Sang realizes that he will be left behind no matter what, and asks if she'll wait for him. Quickly, the girl responds no, explaining that the hero would get mad at her if she did, and that it wouldn't be any different from the others who rely on others. Everyone is panicking, and Kang questions what they were doing about the others who were busy elsewhere. Sang-jin doesn't care if they were resting, but now they'll have to face the consequences. He explains that they weren't left behind because they were weak. It's their weakness that kept them from catching up. He asks if they really thought he'd pat everyone on the head and take care of them. Then he says that if they want to live, each of them must give him 2 runes. Kang tells Minnie that this is all he can offer, and that she can repay the rest after hunting for 3 days. Extending his hand, he says they can make up for it. Back in the present, Minnie says that Hansu always keeps his word, so he'll handle everything himself, and because of that, she needs to hurry and wonders if she can still catch up to him. Sang tells her she could come with them, saying that the others would love to have her in the group. Smiling, the girl thanks him but says it's not the right time for that, promising to answer later. She starts to walk away from him. Watching her, the emo thinks he doesn't need to see her fighting to know, and she's even stronger than before. Trembling with frustration, he says he needs to show something too, because he's still not good enough. He needs to prove his worth. Suddenly, the muscular man calls out to him, saying they need to talk. With a deadpan expression, Sang asks what he wants. One of the men asks why Sang is so tense. The man explains that his subordinate is a bit shy and introduces himself as Park Seol. Pointing behind him, he asks if Sang is the leader of that group and suggests they have a leader-to-leader chat. However, the emo questions this title, explaining that they're just friends and that the people follow him. Park says that's what makes a leader, and that Sang must be impressive, seeing how strong they've become, making Sang feel awkward. Park mentions that he noticed Sang knows that guy Hanzo. Curious, Park says he'd like to ask a few questions about him. Reluctantly, the emo agrees to answer. Meanwhile, inside the altar, Kang notes that goblin venom won't work. He'll need paralysis venom instead. Using the wing cap beads, a small amount of his stamina is recovered during the buff. It's useful for something he found while hunting. He needs to use it before the battle begins. Descending the stairs, he thinks that his attributes aren't very balanced right now, but he has no choice, because to fight this monster, he's still not close to being strong enough. Taking out the box, he says he'll smoke a lot of the Manic Mist cigarettes. He puts one in his mouth, realizing it's been a long time since he's felt this, and hoping you won't regret it. The protagonist starts smoking the Manic Mist cigarette. He's immensely powerful with this item, and the 60 runes he collected earlier. With a focused look, he thinks that a rune worthy of this world has just been created, because when rune attributes exceed 100, the colors start to blend, causing the rune to undergo a transformation, starting from colorless to red, then orange, and finally yellow. Soon, his status numbers begin to shift, starting with a colorless rune, even though the difference is small, from 99.9% in normal runes to 0.01% in colorless runes. The transformation has begun. As the battle unfolds, Kang realizes that the higher the level, the greater the difference in abilities. He knows this monster wouldn't normally appear in the first tutorial, so a colorless rune should be enough to handle it. With his weapon in hand, he states that the essence of a troll would be enough to crush this creature. He prepares to attack. Rushing forward, Kang mentions that only one person has succeeded in obtaining this hidden item so far. Since arriving in this hellish place, the first thing he noticed was that the more impossible something seems, the better the reward. Charging from above, the protagonist goes all out to strike the giant monster. Suddenly, some people begin to pass through the portal, entering the altar. Park, one of the other leaders, asks what Sang-jin is doing and tells him to hurry inside. Sang-jin begins to enter the altar as well. Smiling, the other leader asks if it wouldn't be better to bring his friends along too. Sang-jin responds that it would be. He then tells them to hurry up and help Han-soo. In this world, there are racial skills. Monstrous races like carnivorous beasts are born with these skills. The carnivorous beasts use two specific racial abilities. Quickly, the monster tries to strike the protagonist, who manages to dodge. Focused, Kang anticipates the monster's next attack. The first racial skill of a carnivorous beast is fear. The monster charges at the hero with all its might. Its massive claw approaches him. However, he dodges the attack once again. Backing away from the beast, he realizes that it paralyzes its prey using fear and recovers stamina by consuming its victims. Sweating, Kang notes that the pattern remains the same, which reassures him. Because after the carnivorous beast restores its stamina, if it manages to use the blood-draining swamp, it will drain the blood right out of the body. Interrupting his thoughts, the monster attacks again, smashing the ground. Reflective, the hero understands that he can't compete with raw strength. His needle will only make a tiny puncture. However, he knows of a more effective method. Looking at the giant, terrifying monster, he understands that the best strategy is to restrict its movements. The monster prepares to attack again. Quickly, Hanzo dodges while thinking that he needs to pierce the monster's skin. Getting ready to strike, he aims to hit the median nerve and inject the venom. He successfully lands a powerful blow with his sword, striking directly at the monster's nerve. The beast lets out a deepening roar of pain. Kang thinks that this should be enough. Smiling, he says he'll wait until the monster can't move anymore. Only 12 minutes remain on the clock. The hero prepares to strike again, unleashing a series of magical slashes with his sword, but the monster blocks them. After the attack, Kang steps back. With a demonic gaze, the monster waits, full of rage. However, the protagonist remains calm, observing while smoking his special cigarette. What he's witnessing is the unique skill of fear. It's influenced by one's mental power and magical resistance. Compared to other monsters, Kang has faced beyond this tutorial level. This creature is, in the end, just a joke. Confident, Hanzo believes he can finish it off. Having developed keen senses from years of combat and experience, his survival instincts are sharp. The monster tries to attack, but Hanzo effortlessly dodges again. When his former comrade Kang Taz spoke about combat being merely a matter of prediction, the hero laughed at him. But now he understands what he meant. He can predict the monster's next move. He knows where it will move and where it will strike, allowing him to dodge again. Even with this ability to anticipate the monster's attacks, it's still not easy. Hanzo admits that without increasing his stamina and strength, he wouldn't have been able to attack and evade the monster. Either way, fighting inside the altar was the right decision, considering the amount of time left and the limited resources. The other group watches and realizes that the hero can't be underestimated. The long-haired man comments that he can't believe what he's seeing, while his leader laughs, saying Kang looks pretty relaxed. In the background, Sang-jin observes as the two discuss how it seems Kang didn't even need the runes, and they were likely extorted. Then the leader says they just need to stick to the plan, and his companion agrees, saying they should descend quietly. From afar, Sang-jin shouts, announcing that they've come to help. Surprised, the protagonist looks over, but Sang-jin keeps calling out, telling Hanzo to wait a little longer, while in the background, Park asks what he's doing, placing a hand on Sang-jin's shoulder. Park reminds him they agreed to descend quietly, and the emo replies that Hanzo needed to know they were there. Nervously, Park warns him that if he keeps shouting, a monster will notice them. Extremely anxious, Park stammers, asking if Sang-jin hadn't thought of that. Turning away, he mutters that the emo is an idiot. Smiling, Sang-jin simply apologizes. Down below, Kang is impressed with how much the boy has changed. One of the men comments that there might be a setback because of that idiot. However, he assures it's nothing to worry about. He continues, saying that once they take care of the beast, they'll deal with the two of them. In his mind, he realizes that after watching the protagonist fight, he knows that Kang is dangerous. He's not just a regular human, he's a satisfied tiger, a monster only resting because it's content. Nervously, the man reflects that it's not just about strength because he can't forget what he saw that day. He saw the hero fight against so many alone without hesitation. Upon further reflection, it seems like Kang actually enjoyed fighting. The man concludes that someone as dangerous as Kang cannot be allowed to roam free. Once they eliminate him along with the others, Mei will be under his control. Breaking the silence, the man orders his subordinate to go down and see what's happening. At this rate, there won't be anything left to worry about as the beast's movements are slowing down. Worried, Jin watches the group's conversation from a distance. Suddenly, he begins smiling to himself. Suspicious, the long-haired man comments that the idiot has gone quiet for a reason. However, something grabs everyone's attention. They feel the staircase trembling. Seeing an explosion above their heads, they shout that everything is going to collapse. Everyone starts falling in a panic. On the ground, the man wonders how it's possible that the stairs collapse out of nowhere. Thinking they'd already been caught, he admits it's been exhausting. The beast is now standing right in front of the group, staring at them with a look of hatred. Moreover, the pressure on the first floor is entirely different from that of the upper floor. The group watches the monster in terror. Nervous, Park considers attempting a surprise attack, but wonders where Hanzo is gone. Seeing the hero step out, the long-haired man questions what he's doing. Sweating in fear, the leader asks if the hero isn't supposed to help, saying that with the group's help, they could finish it quickly. For a brief moment, he wonders if the hero is about to give up. In response, Kang merely bites down on his cigarette. Looking at them with disdain, he says he would have helped, but the man messed everything up, and now the monster will recover all its stamina. Glaring at them, he thinks he barely managed to dodge the attacks because of the distraction. He affirms that this group won't be able to handle the situation. Holding the venom, he reflects that once the beast devours the group, it'll be difficult to find it again. He'll have to prepare for another attempt. Climbing the stairs, he tells the man to try handling it on his own if he wants. From below, the men shout, asking if he's really going to run away. In shock, the long-haired man comments that it seems like Kang forgot about his friend. Angry, he suggests using the emo as bait and asks where he is. Speaking up, the boy asks who they're looking for. Smiling menacingly, he says he thought everyone had fallen after the explosion. In his mind, the man realizes that this is why the boy had been so quiet and understands that he destroyed the staircase on purpose. Glaring with hatred, he vows to kill him. Mocking him, Jin tells him to go ahead and bets he won't have time for that, because the monster is salivating, waiting for them to freeze in fear. The monster, ravenous, salivates while observing the group. The man notices that the creature is enjoying the situation. But the leader says that if the beast recovers its stamina, the hero will be at a disadvantage. Extremely nervous, he yells that if the hero abandons them, things will only get worse for him. He thinks they need to cooperate with the hero in order to survive. Breaking expectations, the protagonist says they don't need to worry about the monster or the stairs and asks if they didn't come here to sacrifice themselves. Confused, the man doesn't understand what Kang means by this. The entire group starts trembling in fear. They remember what the little demon said about sacrificing 5 people per day, and that only 5 are needed daily to feed the monster. The creature's mouth is already dangerously close to everyone. Suddenly, the monster devours the entire group, while the hero watches from a distance, stating that he has paid his tribute to the spirit of sacrifice. Afterward, he begins walking back into the altar. Approaching the emo, Kang asks why he did it. Saying he knew about the plan to bring those people on purpose, he warns Jin to be careful with his words. But the boy simply responds that he finally understands. He then starts laughing like a madman. With a cold stare, he says that now he knows how to be useful. Changing his expression, he asks Hanzo to use him. The protagonist stares at him coldly. Then Kang asks why he should do that. But the boy replies that it's because he knows Hanzo has a different goal from the others, which leaves the hero in silence. The boy continues, saying that Hanzo always sees beyond the surface and takes action without hesitation. Despite attacking everyone with overwhelming force, Jin observes that in the end, Hanzo didn't kill any of them, even though it could hurt him later. Even when the altar appeared, no matter what the others said, Hanzo could have easily taken them out with his strength. But he didn't. Jin admits he doesn't understand why Hanzo isn't killing people. Nervously, he points out that anyone can see that this isn't the hero's true nature. Hanzo remains silent, merely watching. Then Jin speaks again, asking Hanzo to use him. He offers to dirty his hands in Hanzo's place, and whoever trades places should either take Jin with them or at least let him follow. In response, Hanzo laughs. Walking toward Jin, Hanzo says he doesn't know. He mentions that how he dealt with things was complicated. Clenching his fist, Hanzo admits that this time there was no other choice, and it was the only way to handle the others. Nervously, Jin insists that next time he won't let anything happen to Hanzo. Shouting, he promises it will be different and begs for a chance. He explains that people will always try to get in Hanzo's way because he stands out too much among them. So, for people to manage on their own, Jin offers to meticulously take care of everyone who gets in the way. That way, Hanzo can focus solely on his goal. Most importantly, Jin believes that as Hanzo grows stronger, he can become stronger following him. In his mind, Jin worries that if Hanzo reveals his true goal, he may stop following him. Hanzo begins to turn his head, suspicious. He asks what Jin would do if circumstances forced him to stay behind, even if he agreed to the plan. Smiling, Hanzo gives an example of Jin being left behind against his will. After this statement, there's a brief silence. Jin takes it as a sign and realizes something is off in the second tutorial. Then Jin says that if that happens, he will get stronger and find Kang again, hoping that when he does, Kang will accept him as his ally once more. As a response, Hanzo laughs and tells him to go down. Shocked, Jin asks if Hanzo is still rejecting him. Approaching him, Jin begs for one more chance, promising to make up for all his mistakes. Finishing his cigarette, Hanzo drops it on the ground and stomps on it. Hanzo tells Jin not to misunderstand. Then, he tells Jin to meet him tomorrow at 1 in the afternoon. He explains that by then, the monster below won't be around. This response leaves Jin stunned. Continuing, Hanzo instructs him to collect all the rooms below because Hanzo killed those 10 people, so Jin should take the rooms. Walking away, Hanzo tells him they'll see each other later. Jin remains silent. As Hanzo departs, he thinks to himself that he's unsure if it was the right choice, but he knows that he will meet Jin at some point. He recalls when Ares told him to return to the past to save all of humanity. She mentioned that there would be people who would stand in his way, and that he needed someone to punish them, a justice enforcer. This enforcer would manage things in his place. It's an essential role, not only for Alice, but for every monarch in their world. The monarchs don't dirty their own hands. Instead, someone else does it for them, helping the monarchs move closer to their goal. With his arms crossed, Hanzo originally thought of choosing Eren for the role, but he's now considering giving Jin a chance, though he's uncertain how much he can trust him. He recalls that once the second tutorial begins, everyone will be forcibly scattered, and when that happens, Jin's mindset might change. However, he understands that with some runes and 8 offerings, having a useful enforcer might be worth it. Still, Hanzo knows that if this fails, there will be nothing else to do, and for now, his focus is on obtaining the hidden piece, willing to do whatever it takes. He vows to finish things once and for all. He wonders what he needs to accomplish next. Looking at the conditions for the second hidden piece, Hanzo realizes that it's simple. Before the carnivorous beast destroys the entire altar and emerges, he must defeat it once and for all. However, this condition seems designed to be nearly impossible to complete. Suddenly, a mysterious magical portal appears in the area. Upon entering the portal, the system notifies that the secret mission has been completed. Hanzo approaches a magical object, wondering what he'll find next. As Kang looks at the magical object, he feels a surge of excitement. Placing his hands on it, he realizes that it's the Ring of Nurmaha, the symbol of the Vampire King. Perplexed, he remarks that he can't imagine how the Berserker monarch managed to obtain this. He affirms that this is why no one has been able to claim it before. This is Nurmaha's ring. There are several standards for categorizing the levels of an artifact, but the most important standard is its color. A common artifact can never be more valuable than one with a superior color, although of course there are exceptions. Just as a traveler gradually develops their rune, growth-type artifacts absorb the rune and change color as well. Among all of them, there is one item that stands out as the best to have, the numbered series. Specifically, number 9, Nurmaha's Ring. This artifact is symbolic of Clemente. However, despite the name numbered series doesn't imply that there is only one. In the past, Clemente was the only one to own this artifact. This is why it bears symbolic importance. Through the 8 authorities that originated from this artifact, countless people were torn apart. Kang can't believe he now holds such an artifact in his hands. Ripping the item, the protagonist smiles, acknowledging how valuable it is. Considering how difficult it was to obtain this artifact, he knew it wasn't just some random object that could be tossed aside, but he's still surprised to learn that it belongs to the numbered series. This is Nurmaha's ring, a colorless artifact. The system notifies him that it can unlock an authority. From what he knows, the ring of Nurmaha has a total of 8 authorities. However, being colorless, he can only unlock 1 authority. The system notifies him that the authority of destruction is available. Its ability is to deactivate individual traits and abilities, including passive ones and skills. However, to activate it, you must make direct contact with the opponent. Once the time limit is reached, the effect is automatically suspended. The protagonist thinks that the ability to nullify his enemy's powers at will is incredibly powerful, but to fully utilize this, at least one of his stats must match the colorless rune. Pondering this, he realizes he will need to acquire several magical runes from now on. Suddenly, he steps out of the portal. Outside the altar, Kang begins to walk. In the distance, the hero calls out his name. Amazed, Minnie says she heard that Kang finally managed to slay the carnivorous beast. However, her excitement quickly turns to fear. A huge shadow begins to rise over the street. Time has completely run out, reaching its end. The group watches as the altar simply vanishes. Kang reminds Minnie that he had told her before. Smiling, he says he promised to take responsibility and eliminate the monster. Seeing this, Minnie blushes deeply. Embarrassed, she fixes her hair and nods. The emo Jin realizes that Kang really did succeed, and he feels validated in his trust in him. Hanzo mentions that there should be some time before the next tutorial begins. He tells Minnie to start hunting. Nervously, she calls out to Kang. She says she wants to take a different path from his now. Minnie admits that she doesn't feel qualified to stay by his side at the moment. When she's around him, she tends to rely on him too much. Smiling, she says that fortunately, Jin offered to come with her. Confirming this, Jin happily states that she's welcome in the group and that everyone will like her. As she gazes at Kang, Minnie thinks it's a shame, but she believes that parting ways for now is the best option. Kang reflects that they would end up taking different paths anyway when the new tutorial starts. He understands that Minnie is only thinking from her perspective, and that's fine. So he tells her that it was a good decision. After his response, he begins to walk away, and Minnie falls silent. But quickly, she calls out for him to wait. She promises that the next time they meet, she won't give up so easily. Smiling, she says that they'll see each other again. With that, Kang smiles, bidding farewell to both of them. He agrees that they will indeed meet again. He then calls for Jin's attention, remembering when the emo told Kang to take a chance on him. Kang says that if Jin is serious, the choice is his. With just that one sentence, Jin is overjoyed and filled with excitement. A week passes. The little demon has gathered all the survivors. He declares that they have waited long enough, announcing that the second tutorial is about to begin. Then, with a devilish smile, he comments that there are more people than he expected. With a snap of his fingers, he says it's time to change stages. Something starts glowing on the ground, surprising everyone as they try to figure out what it is. They realize that there's a light shining beneath their feet. A young girl clings tightly to her father in fear. Meanwhile, the hero, Hansu, remains calm, already knowing what is about to happen. He understands that the second tutorial has finally begun. In another location, the people have been teleported, confused and questioning where they are. The girl is terrified. The little demon, Diabolus, appears and asks if everyone is present. The system announces that before entering the tutorial, they need to adjust the number of people. One of the survivors, already nervous, demands to know what they mean by adjusting the number of people. The system clarifies that from now on, it must do one thing. They need to limit their room to 7 people total. The system reiterates that no room can have more than 7 people. Nervous, Diabolus realizes there are 8 people in their room. The system explains that each room has different scenarios, but the start should be the same across them. It asks the group to discuss the matter amongst themselves. One of the survivors thinks to himself that he had suspected their progress had been too easy up until now. He wonders what they should do next. Looking at Hansu's weapon, one man comments that it looks strange, like a needle. He questions if this guy is really Hansu, saying he hasn't seen Hansu's ability in action yet, but it must be impressive to witness. Then, a woman steps forward, suggesting that whoever is left behind should work together. She adds that, in any case, someone has to go. Smiling, she proposes that everyone introduce themselves and make a case for why they should stay. She encourages everyone to show their value as individuals. A confident man steps up, offering to go first. Arrogantly, he presents himself, sure that no one in this room could defeat him. He boasts that he's certainly not someone to be dismissed. Hansu, observing quietly, realizes that the man is using Art Q1. He understands that this is a unique ability that uses magic to enhance one's stats. It also allows the user to empower their weapon with magic, just as this man has done. Art Q1 is definitely a unique and useful skill. Despite this, Hansu knows the man's effectiveness is limited. Still, having a skill like this is better than nothing. The red-haired man continues, claiming that if skill importance is considered, he has the upper hand. Introducing himself as Kangmin, he reveals that he possesses the healing ability. With his arms crossed, another man introduces himself as a combat expert. Frightened, one of the survivors panics, saying they shouldn't kill anyone. Plead him for an exception because they are a family. After this, the room falls into silence. The confident man turns to the woman who first suggested the idea of introductions and challenges her to lead by example. Blushing, the girl introduces herself as Jimin. She nervously announces that she'll demonstrate her ability. The blonde-haired man, trembling, asks why she's getting so close to him. Seeing her approach with a menacing gaze, he warns her that she'll regret coming at him so boldly. Suddenly, something strikes him. Jimin uses her ability, stabbing the man in the back. Everyone in the room is shocked. Even the man with his family watches in horror. After defeating the blonde man, Jimin collects his runes, grinning and calling herself lucky. Embarrassed, she admits she wasn't sure she would get the rune, but plans to take the skill. Smiling, she offers to split the remaining runes with the others. One of the survivors realizes she's completely unhinged and mentally notes that they need to be cautious around her. In the background, Hansu sighs, watching everything unfold. He reflects that, thanks to someone who didn't know how to handle a better ability, everything has become easier. He understands that the people who died in the past are now present, and thus the entire flow has changed. Smiling, Hansu knows things are progressing in an interesting direction. Suddenly, the little demon appears, commenting that this rune reached 7 people faster than the others. Now, the demon says it's time for the explanation. He declares that he will first show them something. Unveiling a surreal landscape, he explains that this is the path of ascension. Their task is simple, he says. They must keep climbing this massive path for 3 months and reach the dormant volcano at the center of the 2nd floor. Once they pass this second tutorial, the whole world of adventures will open up to them. Wishing them the best, the demon vanishes. The group begins walking across the bridge with Hansu leading the way. Trying to lighten the mood, one of the men encourages everyone to stay together and get along. Watching the protagonist walk ahead of them, another man grows irritated, wondering what Hansu's deal is. Just then, one of the survivors notices something strange happening. As Kang looks back, he realizes the bridge is collapsing behind them. Without hesitation, the group begins running for their lives. After a frantic escape, they finally reach solid ground, exhausted. The little demon appears, smirking, and asks if he forgot to mention that the lower part of the island collapses over time. He adds that the bridges fall apart even faster, so they should be careful. Frustrated, the group realizes this is something the demon should have said from the start. In the background, the combatant asks the hero where he's going. Annoyed, he curses Hansu, calling him antisocial. The crazy woman, Jimin, suggests they follow Hansu, saying that he seems confident and likely knows where to go. The entire group begins to trail behind Kang. They pass through a dense forest. After walking for hours, the combatant complains that they haven't found any bridges yet and demands to know where Hansu is leading them. He grumbles that they've been seeing the same things over and over with no clear destination. Frustrated, he asks how long they'll have to keep walking. Curious, he then notices Hansu eating something and asks what it is. Hansu replies that it's oak bark, which has an antidote effect against venom. Perplexed, the man asks why he would need that. Suddenly, a giant snake appears. Reacting quickly, Hansu grabs the man by the shirt and throws him to the ground, saving him from the snake's strike. His expression shifts as he realizes he's found what he was looking for. Startled and terrified, the man asks how Hansu knew about the attack. Using the same nonchalant tone, Hansu attributes it to his superpowers. Shocked, the man watches as the snake bites Hansu's arm, but Hansu quickly retaliates, attacking the snake while calling it stubborn. The creature, an adult runic serpent, has a temperament that changes based on the rune on its head. However, there is no consistent pattern to these changes, making its behavior unpredictable. Frustrated, the man realizes the snake's attacks leave no room for recovery. He recalls that someone named Hancho had mentioned a trick to defeating them, but at this rate, it's not working. Angry, he turns to the family hiding behind him, asking why they aren't helping and telling them to stop hiding behind him. The father nervously apologizes, saying he must protect his family above all else. This response infuriates the combatant even more. He grumbles that having a family has nothing to do with fighting and wonders if they're trying to get themselves killed. He then turns to the bespectacled mage, asking if he has any excuses, since he has no family to protect. Adjusting his glasses with a sadistic smile, the mage replies that he can't risk getting hurt in battle. He explains that if he's injured, he won't be able to heal the others. Reacting to this, the combatant sarcastically asks if the mage's sword is just for show, but then he concedes that the logic makes sense, since the mage is the team's healer. The mage smugly reminds the group that his healing comes at the cost of 3 strength runes. Hearing this, the combatant is left speechless. Shayna turns to the combatant, asking what he plans to do. Sad and frustrated, he walks through the grass, wondering if he's the only one who finds this situation unbearable. The bespectacled mage taunts him, urging him to charge ahead. Meanwhile, Hanzo then calls someone using his technology. It's a person named Keel, who asks what he thinks of the new group, and the man responds to not even mention it and asks how things are going over there. The person on the other line says it's not too bad, and that apparently there is someone from the rescue from the next floor saying that he needs to find recruits along the way to expand the group. So the man wonders who he can bring along to the group among all the available options, remembering Hanzo, who claims to have superpowers. He also remembers Jimin, who is apparently crazy, in addition to the cunning Mary who wears glasses. And of course, there is still a family of useless people, so he says they must survive above all. He says they will talk later and says goodbye to the captain. Suspicious, the protagonist just watches the fighter and only says that it's too early for someone with monarch traits to have already manifested them, saying that part of the attributes of a person that all monarchs possess is the literal ability to lead a group, and to become a monarch, in fact. The monarch gives their clan members their own symbol. All who bear the monarch symbol have their bond with others strengthened, making it possible for the clan to communicate among themselves. However, the number of people the monarch can assign to this group is limited, but for now they will be busy trying to recruit more people. Thinking about this, if the protagonist wants to compete with the monarchs, he will have to start doing the same, because to be heard, he needs to be strong enough to draw attention. Sometime later, all the lizards and rune snakes have been destroyed. Then he wonders if they have already left the area since the number of the dead is decreasing. The protagonist moves forward, understanding that they are almost at the nest of the mutant rune snake, and that they are finally close to the reason he is there. The mutant rune snake is much larger than the others, and has a different scale. It is the rune-eating snake. The family man behind everyone asks for calm, wondering if he really needs to fight this giant snake or if it could just ignore them. But Hanzo says that if he wants to leave for that reason, he can go, as he doesn't care either. The man says he doesn't know what to say, and that they should walk as a group. Facing Kang, he says that the man got something wrong, affirming that he is not walking together with the group. Then he explains that they were just walking in the same direction, but it's already time for them to separate. The girl says there's nothing to do, and the man, desperate, asks who's going to fight like that. Smiling, Jimin says they can't force the boy to stay with the group, and asks if the man is going to back out as well. But this response also leaves him in shock. Then he says for them to continue. The fighter is curious about Kang's decision, thinking he understands that he heard the hero is stubborn, but he can't abandon him this way. The doctor asks him why he is standing still, saying that if he is thinking of bringing the boy to the group, he might as well forget it. Sighing, he responds that all this time he was the only one not healed by him, and that people like the hero don't listen to others. From what he analyzes, he's also not the type that will live for long. Hanzo thinks it's a pity for such a talented person, but there's no other way. Fighting with the protagonist, the giant snake tries to strike him, then he tries to dodge when the rune is active. But when he removes the agility rune, it attacks. Quickly, he charges at the creature, attacking it with his powerful mule, realizing that it is stronger and faster than the scaled snake he faced in the previous tutorial. However, it's nowhere near the carnivorous beast. Analyzing the fight, the hero understands that when he attacks the snake, it switches to the resistance rune, weakening the damage. Understanding that if he takes more time, he won't be at a disadvantage. But it's going to be a hassle to deal with this situation, stating that defeating this creature will be simple, since he just needs to focus on the trees in the center of the clearing, which are shaped like a nest. So you must ignore the snake and first attack that place, because that way, instinctively, it will ignore its own defense to protect the nest. Running from the snake towards the nest, he understands that it works. However, he suddenly stops running, attacking the giant snake with multiple strikes with his needle. Happy, he says he got his hands on it faster than he imagined. The reward is the egg of the rune-eating snake. The egg is starting to hatch. In his hands, he holds the egg of the rune-eating snake and the rune he just took. The egg then begins to hatch more intensely, and some living being emerges from within it. It is a a young rune-eating snake. It eats the runes and spits them out immediately. Curiously, this young snake eats 3 random runes and spits out 2 chosen by the owner, so you need to give it 3 to receive 2. Then he says that she can get all the runes she wants, but getting the runes he needs is much more important. Understanding that for now, he should focus on increasing his magical and physical resistance, telling the little snake that now she can rest. And with that, he has achieved his goal, having to soon leave this place. The child asks his father where they are going, and he tells him not to make noise. Looking at the map, he realizes that it's not showing the structures in much detail, and that they can't move without thinking when they don't know who might be out there. Wondering where they will be safe on this island. Irritated, he thinks about what would have happened if he hadn't been abandoned by the others. Your wife says she heard something coming from the bush. Trembling, he spreads his arms, questioning whether it's a monster or another person. But who emerges from the bush is Kang Hansu. He asks what the family is doing in this place. Nervous, the man asks if he was eating the monster he went to fight. Quickly, Kang responds that he killed the monster. In shock, the man questions if he really killed it, and that he came back with only a scratch, since it hasn't been that long since they separated. Then, the hero asks where the others from the group are. With that, the man starts telling the whole story. Going back a little in time, his family had been abandoned by the group. The man said it was very dangerous for them to separate, and that they shouldn't do it. But the commander sighed, estimating that the man's plan was just to relax while they did everything. Jimin agreed with the fighter, saying that they lost one of the best, and that it was annoying to take care of people like them. The doctor said he should stick with whoever was stronger. Irritated, the man remembers this and says they separated, and that they even blocked the path so they couldn't follow them. Muttering about how they are idiots and how they were despised, the family man asks Hansu where he is going, and the boy replies that they need to walk because they have already lost too much time. Baweek tells her husband that they should also go, so the family begins to follow the protagonist. Turning around, he asks what they are doing. Nervous, the man says that the hero himself said he was never with them, and says that this family is just making their own way. Ignoring response, he thinks he is very straightforward. Then he tells them to do as they please, because he will fight alone anyway. A little while later, he is already annihilating some wild monsters. Sang-jin is very difficult, but because of that, his attributes are getting better and better. After that, he puts his young little snake on the ground to grab the rune, and considers it a good decision to focus on increasing his resistances first before anything else. The snake is eating the life rune of the moment, humming. His attributes are rising a lot, especially his resistances. The hero stares at the knife, thinking about cooking something with the rest of the monsters. The daughter blushes, and is very excited to see that Kang is getting stronger, and that it's amazing. Then she wonders if they should also fight, but her father says there is no need for that, and that just being together is already like a blessing from the gods. So they just need to find a safe place to stay. Then they decide to follow the protagonist. The 3 of them are running after him, trying to keep up. The girl wonders where he is going now. Then she notices he is entering a tunnel. He is moving forward, fully focused on the tunnel, while the family is also following him, but they are a little scared. Seeing other people along the tunnel, he wonders if this is where they were supposed to get all along. The man is very happy that they reached this place without any problems, and for still being alive, and the family is also excited along with him. Noticing the arrival of the family, the man looks back and also sees that the protagonist has arrived, seeing that he returned alive without any injuries, surprisingly. The little devil approaches the family man, saying that he is making a lot of noise even though he arrived late. Then he says he will close the door since they were the last to arrive. Closing the door at an instant, he scares the whole family. Snapping his fingers with a sadistic smile, he says the large-scale event will now begin, welcoming everyone to the first layer of the floor. That 75 people remain, which is very good, pointing out that luckily they didn't have many casualties along the way. Then he says this event is special, it's a battle for tokens. A system screen appears for all participants. The little devil explains that they need to use the tokens to move, and that the goal is to get out of there from the collapsing first floor to go to another island. He also says it's obvious that some islands are full of monsters and surrounded by lava, but if they are lucky, they might end up on a central or southern island which have many treasures. Excited, he says that everyone would want to go to these easier islands with treasures, but that way it wouldn't be fun, so there will be some rules. The capacity of the boats is only 3 people, and they need at least 3 tokens to board. However, if 3 people use 3 tokens, they will be randomly separated to different islands, whether on a central island or farther away. If 2 people use 3 tokens, they can go together, but they cannot choose their destination. However, if someone uses all 3 tokens, they can go wherever they want. Everyone is frightened, except our hero. Smiling, he talks about sympathy, and in his mind, he understands that she was the last one, and all who could have ascended are already gone, leaving only one boat. With the map in hand, he says that the islands farthest from the center are all collapsing, and that the difficulty of each island will vary greatly. Therefore, the more advantageous the position, the better. He says there are about 30 minutes left before the entire first floor collapses, and that they have a total of 25 boats scattered around the crater. With a very sadistic smile, he tells them to start, and that they need to survive no matter how. Because this way, it's even more fun. Soon, chaos begins as people start shouting at each other to give up their tokens. Irritated, they start fighting, saying not to be left behind. Someone tells Hansu that this is the beginning of inevitable chaos, calling his name, which makes the hero look to the side. The family man kneels, begging for his help, pleading for him to help his family just this once. Desperate, the man explains that he needs more tokens to get to the central island without any trouble. With a frightened expression, he says that the protagonist is strong, and quickly adds that he can get tokens or anything else he needs. Then he suggests that he steal tokens from other people to bring to the family. He only thinks that if the hero does this, they won't have any problems getting there in time. Putting his head on the ground, he says that he would be saving the lives of innocents. Coldly, Hank says that the man needs to take care of himself and solve his own problems. Kneeling, the man begs him to resolve the situation, pleading kindly, while someone in the background tells him to be quiet. Approaching the man, Hansu kicks him in the chest. Grabbing him by the shirt, he says that he is very annoying and asks if he will keep listening. Invitingly, he calls Kang Hansu to go with him and says that this way, he might even get some tokens if he needs them. He explains that even after leaving the group, he doesn't like any of the members. Clenching his fist, he asks if Kang feels the same way, and since he's also strong, he can join those of the same level. Then he explains that this is a power his companion awakened, different from a skill, and if Kang agrees, he can obtain it too. The man says he already talked to the leader about him, and the leader agreed. Before he could finish speaking, the protagonist quickly refuses the invitation. Confused, the fighter doesn't understand anything. Explaining, he says they are not like those useless people, and that he doesn't understand the real value of having a clan. Persistently, the protagonist says he knows very well what it means to have a clan, remembering the bonds he had in the past with other people. But this time, he will not be subordinate to anyone, because this time, he would end up distracted from his own goal. Hankyul then says there is no other option, throwing token on the ground. He then explains that he stole the token from that pathetic man, concluding that it's a shame he refused, but that he also can't always do what he wants. Excited, he says he'll meet up with the others on the central island, so he can consider this an early gift. But in his thoughts, Kang says it's a useless effort because it doesn't matter at the moment. The blonde man approaches, saying there's a token under him, and another says that if he doesn't take it, it's up to him to grab it. Quickly, several people head toward the token on the ground. One ends up grabbing the token first, but they start fighting amongst themselves to see who will keep the token in the end. One of the men goes with a knife toward the girl's father, who begs not to be killed. The man with the knife grabs the girl by her coat, saying they're a family and that he'll give her a dignified death. Then everyone starts screaming in an endless chaos, thinking that this family was placed there to watch a show from the beginning, and that no matter how much effort they put into the situation they are in, even their death is planned in this place. Jimin catches the protagonist's attention, asking why he refused Hankyul's offer earlier. He responds that he has other reasons, and asks why she wants to know. With a scary smile, she says she also has a proposal for the hero, showing that she belongs to a clan, and tells him to come with her. He starts nodding his head, saying no, and she smiles, saying it was expected. However, she says that before leaving she has one more question, asking if he hasn't left yet because of a sense of empathy. Then she says she doesn't think that's his type. She begins staring at the hero, who ends up staring back at the girl. And no one will know what happened down here, because those who stayed won't even be able to protect themselves. In his mind, he thinks that all of these people are ones he could have saved at some point. However, in the tutorial, where the fairy's power is immense, he won't be able to save everyone, so he only has one thing left to do. Gripping his weapon, he apologizes to everyone around him, thinking that he knows very well the fate of those who cannot move on to the next island, down below where the sea of poison lies, while the fairy seemed to enjoy watching all the people melt one after another. He could only watch all of this without being able to do anything, so he says people can hate him as much as they want. In his mind, he thinks that instead of suffering while being exploited by them until death, he is being merciful in his own way. Sometime later, he is feeling the breeze inside the boat. The devil says that he is truly incredible, that he didn't expect him to do that, but regrets the fact that it was too easy. Laughing a lot, he says that Kang is a rising star and doesn't need to worry because he won't go gossiping about it. With a sadistic smile, he says he will be waiting for him up ahead. Reflectively, Kang thinks that he won't regret it, and that he didn't come back to save everyone, but to win as quickly as possible. He cannot falter, affirming that he must keep moving forward. His next goal is the Central Island. The system notifies that all 1921 travelers who arrived are very welcome to the land of opportunities, known as the Central Island. There are a total of 3 important things on the Central Island. The first is to defend the castle that holds the crystal. The second is to grow stronger through the underground dungeon, the only dungeon in this region. And the last is that the monster wave is coming, so you need to protect yourself. The archers are trying to destroy the undead wielding swords in a fierce battle between them all. If they can hold a wave here, they will survive during the day, so they must stand firm. One of the men is on the ground, saying he can't do it and hopes to survive another month while begging for help. Another shouts at him to maintain the defense line. Slamming his hand on the table, someone says they need to establish some rules, explaining that the defense was almost broken in just one day, and that's why they suffered serious losses. This is Park Young-wook, M-Kid of the Monarch clan, who says that if things continue like this, they will fail to protect the crystal. And Ju-hyun, from the Hwaijeong Monarch clan, says they should discuss this matter when the other monarchs arrive. Hong Shui from the Nowon Monarch clan comments that the most powerful are already in this place, so it doesn't matter. This is Lee Duke-dae from the Smaug Monarch clan, who asks what they suggest doing. Park says the biggest problem is the lack of strength and defense, and that they need to bring people who are not affiliated with the clan, even by force if necessary. Shia says they have no way to control the unaffiliated travelers, but Park reiterates that they need to deal with them even using force, because a new attack is coming, and they have no guarantee they will be able to hold it off this time. Then the red hair asks if the clan alliance did any recruiting, and that by combining their forces with the outsiders, they could guarantee they would defend themselves. However, the man says they need to consider the number of people going to the underground dungeons because it's a serious problem, since this caused them to grow in numbers, and now they almost have the same number of members as the clan alliance. These gathered people formed a ridiculous group calling themselves the Basement Alliance, and when they started taking action, they were already beyond the control of the clan alliance. So he asks how the Clan Alliance, a group focused on defense, could deal with these people, suggesting that they send the Force Line clan to the front to the dungeon first. One of the monarchs intervenes, saying that if this is the plan, the smaller clans should go ahead to minimize losses. Biting her finger, the purple-clad monarch says that if at least the original 1900 had focused on defense. At first, everyone participated in defense because everyone's survival depended on it. However, some people started returning from the dungeon with powerful artifacts and became stronger. Soon, everyone on defense began going to the dungeons one by one. Then she wonders how they will be able to defend the crystal for the next month, and someone arrives in the background. Arriving all smiles and happy, Jimin says she's not here to pick a fight this time, and mentions she brings important news. She mentions she received a report that someone is going mad and fighting against the Basement Alliance. This information leaves her colleague in shock. Everyone is surprised by what the girl said. Meanwhile, outside, someone is kneeling on the ground, begging for mercy. Quickly, a sharp weapon approaches. It is the protagonist's needle, striking the man's shoulder with full force. With a cigarette in his mouth, Hanzo says he's free to go and that starting tomorrow, everyone will fight at the top. Trembling with fear, the man begs him not to come any closer. The man lying on the ground is in shock, realizing he cannot win against the hero, while Kang says he needs his weapon. In the background, a doctor is watching everything, realizing it's Kang Hanzo. One of the men grabs a knife and runs toward the hero. Staring coldly, Kang says that the artifact he's holding is too good for someone without color. Striking him in the chest, he says that's what he deserves. Trembling with the knife in his hand, the bald man wonders if the knife's ability has disappeared because it's not penetrating. In response, Hanzo says that now it's his turn. He strikes the bald man with full force. Then the hero states that it's tiring to fight him while trying not to kill him, and that it's inevitable because in the end, he's a valuable resource. Smirking sarcastically, he says there's only one more, but that should be enough. The clan alliance quickly arrives at the scene, shocked, wondering who this person is. In their minds, they understand this is the boy Hanzo had mentioned. With his arms crossed, Kang says that the Basement Clan and the Clan Alliance will unite starting tomorrow, alternating between hunting and defense, and if anyone has a different opinion, they should speak up. Then he explains that people cannot be commanded without this characteristic anyway. At this point, he asks him to gather as many useful people as possible and have them join his clan. He assures that the people outside will follow all his commands. However, one of the clan leaders realizes that this will only benefit the hero, not them. She wonders what he truly wants. Monarch Lee looks at the girl, questioning what she wants as well. Smiling, the monarch says that someone like the hero, who just arrived and is already causing trouble, must have some hidden interest behind it. Hanzo responds that as long as the basic system rules are set, he has no intention of interfering. However, Lee says that you never know. He might simply change his mind and get rid of the clan alliance at some point. Still, Kang says he's not interested in these debates, but if that's a concern, quickly, the hero disappears from the scene, leaving everyone in the room in shock at his disappearance. Grabbing his sword, the man says it's just a simple invisibility skill, and that there's no way the boy left that place. However, Hanzo responds that he could have attacked if he wanted, appearing behind the arrogant monarch, placing a knife close to his neck. The man realizes that it wasn't just a simple trick, but rather a dragon that was confusing his senses. Nervously, the man can't believe he fell for something like this so easily. Then the boy says he got a new item before coming here to join the current trend. Guards quickly arrive at the hall, but Kang says he has no intention of being hostile toward them, telling everyone to do their best according to their positions, stating that's all he wants, nothing more. As he leaves the hall, he thinks that they've all been against each other the whole time, and it will be difficult to unite their forces, but there's still time to go easy on them. Then he thinks that this is just the beginning, and that something else is coming next. Standing in front of him, Jimin asks the protagonist to wait, saying she will be disappointed if he simply leaves. Jimin refers to the conversation they had earlier and says she now expects a different answer. She asks the protagonist what he thinks about it. She reiterates that she has already asked this question before and wonders if he knows how to join her clan. Standing in front of the protagonist, the girl starts to stare. Approaching him, she says that this time she expects a more honest answer. Getting closer, she asks what he thinks and questions whether he doesn't feel lonely traveling alone or if he has someone in mind to accompany him. She explains that she heard he was with a girl named Mi at the station. Observing the protagonist, she understands that he's unresponsive, so she can consider that a no. Being overly friendly, she says it's all good, and that it would be great if they could join her clan. Ignoring her, he starts walking, leaving the girl in complete shock, unable to believe what she's seeing. She says he couldn't even pretend to be listening. Then she curses under her breath as he sighs and walks away. Park's clan is organizing everything after the battle, instructing them to gather the bodies and saying they need more supplies. They mention that people with support skills are also important. Arriving at the scene, someone calls for the sergeant, saying the southern wall is also secure. He responds that's great and that the wounded should head in that direction while the rest can rest. The man says they managed to keep a consistent defense and that none of the positions were understaffed. However, he reveals that those who joined initially were uncooperative, but in the end, everything worked out, concluding that thanks to them, they didn't suffer as much damage. The commander states that given their situation, they can't afford to slack off. With that monster guarding the defense line, they had no other option, and it's shocking to see the hero handling so many monsters at once. If this person had a bit more education, they could be recruited by the clan. He thinks that regardless if they continue as they are, they'll be able to handle the opening of the rifts. Suddenly, someone screams out of the sky. Soon, the usual little demon appears. All excited, he asks if they were waiting for him. He asks if they had enough rest over the past 2 days. Park's clan is in shock, realizing the demon's presence can only mean something bad. The demon explains that it looks like they're ready to put real action into practice for the people who are aboard, and starting today, demons will appear on the battlefield. Additionally, these demons are very powerful, but the people shouldn't worry too much. He explains that the undead they had been facing up until now didn't drop any rewards. However, by killing a demon, many crystals will drop. The creature says this is a great opportunity for everyone there, because they can exchange these crystals for some incredible artifacts that are exclusive to this location's shop. Moreover, they can also exchange the crystals for something else, which are tickets to escape the current location. He questions whether they want to escape as quickly as possible. Talking in parallel, 2 men understand that by using the crystals, they can escape, and up to 5 people can leave together. The demon concludes, saying they better start collecting crystals. Suddenly, a red portal opens in the sky. A monstrous claw begins to emerge from the portal. It's a giant monster with red eyes and teeth. He's a hulking monster who starts laughing frenetically on his arrival. People scream that he's coming their way. The monster begins walking with a hateful glare. Everyone is terrified, saying someone needs to go forward to see what the monster is like. Quickly, someone bursts into the middle of the crowd, yelling for them to step back. It's the protagonist who leaps high, heading straight for the new demon in the tutorial. He attacks using his new sword infused with magic, but the monster manages to block with one hand. With his free hand, the monster begins to create some sort of power to strike. However, swiftly, the protagonist dodges the attack. Then, he says it's to be expected of a demon, even if it's a more degraded version. Excited, he mentions that he can't land a critical hit with normal attacks, and that his mist cigarette is also finished. So, he needs to enhance his existence to fence with a rune-eating snake. However, he realizes his attack power is not to defeat it. For now, he will need to make good use of the artifacts he obtained in the dungeon, using the rogue's lightweight boots, which increase the user's movement speed for a total of 1 minute, deciding to attack it with speed. Wearing the boots, he quickly charges toward the monster and jumps behind it. Apparently, the demon won't be able to react in time. However, reflexively, the demon manages to defend anyway. Kang starts landing several consecutive strikes, but all are blocked by the creature. He is extremely serious in this battle because he can't afford to be defeated. Without losing his composure, he manages to land a direct hit on the torso. This enrages the demon even more, who unleashes a black shockwave. Anticipating the attack, the hero defends himself using his sword. After that, he is thrown to the ground, causing an explosion with the full impact. With no other choice, he opts to use the power of the Nirmare ring. This is the power of destruction, which automatically neutralizes any ability of on-contact. On the bridge, everyone watches as the protagonist faces the demon alone. A surgeon of Park's clan wonders how strong he has become, and his leader says they need to be ready to seize this opportunity. He asks if the leader wants them to attack, and the captain says that if they don't, others will take their place. Quickly, they all rush down to chase after the monster. While watching the fight, Jimmy asks her leader if they should help the protagonist, but Shia in turn says she prefers to wait for now. The woman states that she wants to see Kang's capabilities at the moment. Meanwhile, he is battling the demon. Several people are surrounding him. Mockingly, he thinks about how shameless these people are, and that the demon could use its racial ability at any moment. It cannot afford to be distracted by the people around him. The demon is at least 5 times the size of the protagonist, yet he remains unfazed, wondering why the demon hasn't used its ability yet. Demons have vastly different racial abilities depending on the individual, making them unpredictable. So the question is why the demon hasn't used its racial ability up to this point, wondering if it's a creature that utilizes area attacks. Suddenly, the demon begins to build up its attack. Kang yells for everyone to back off because they cannot handle this demon. The medic says he has a bad feeling about this, and asks if they should retreat for now, but his colleague says they need to stay close to land the final blow. With a demonic smile, the monster prepares to attack. Using its racial ability, Infernal World, it smashes the ground and causes fire to erupt. In the background, a random person with a glowing shield says that these flames are no match for his new artifact. Obsessed, he says he only needs to land the final blow, and the rewards will be all his. However, many flames rise around him. Everyone starts running. They all flee as the mammoth's shield is killed by the flames. Though everyone is running away at the same time, Kang stands still, waiting for the attack. He begins to activate the ability of his ring, saying that he will try to use the full power of the artifact right now. Attacking the flames directly, he uses his authority destruction ability with his sword. Then people are in shock, wondering if the flames were extinguished just by the hero's attack. The strike was strong enough to crack the ground. People remark that he's a tough one. In his mind, the protagonist states that he is the only person who can fight the demon, because he's the only one who can match this power. Suddenly, the monster charges at him. The two of them are fighting engulfed in flames. In the background, the red-haired clan leader watches, wondering if the person he's seeing is truly a traveler like all of them, because surely they started off as equals. However, the power gap between them is enormous. He points out that they need some kind of plan, because if things continue this way, the clan alliance will lose all the advantages they've gained so far. Sometime later, people are already preparing for the next wave. The girl is leaning against the wall alone. Someone approaches, saying that if she's waiting for a certain person, she better forget it. Confused by the comment, she asks what he means. It's the fighter, explaining that it's useless to wait because he also waited every day in vain. Changing the subject, she asks who he was waiting for, and he replies that he was waiting for Kang Hansu. Shifting the conversation again, he asks if she's also following the orders of the monarch. With a frightening look, he says that the clan alliance has been very fragile lately and asks if she wants to know the reason. Staring back at him, the girl asks why he's talking about this. Then he asks if it isn't obvious. Suddenly, the man turns to the other side, and she asks what's wrong with him. The fighter says he felt like they were being watched, wondering right now if he's imagining things. Inside a hall, Monarch Lee is observing the two and says it's been some time since Kang Han-soo started monopolizing the demons, but he hasn't done anything strange so far. His colleague says they placed several members of the clan to monitor the hero. The girl explains that besides defending, hunting demons, and visiting the underground dungeon, Kang Han-soo hardly rests. Then she adds that those who haven't yet chosen a clan are constantly fighting with the clan members. The monarch says that's expected since someone like him doesn't have a clan either. In other words, it's more natural for problems to arise because even the clan alliance follows Kang Han-soo's orders. Some people begin to enter the hall while the man explains that he's prepared something for this. Smiling, he says that for the sake of their future plans, this cannot continue. Several people begin gathering with everyone in the hall. With open arms, he asks if they can start discussing the future of the clan alliance. Elsewhere, a monster lies dead with two of the protagonists' weapons stuck in it. Kang Han-soo appears tired after many battles. Throwing his needle to the ground, he says it's useless at this point. Spitting profusely and exhausted, he says that with this, the total is 60 and can finally get the top-tier artifacts sold in the crystal shop. Because most of these artifacts are exclusive to clans and have great effects. However, if the crystals fall into the hands of the clans, it will definitely lead to disputes, so he needs to nip this in the bud now. Observing, he says he has another, larger objective as well. Then the system notifies the exchange of 60 crystals. He comments that he can use most weapons, but it's better to use those he's already more familiar with, so he decides to purchase the Judgment of De Kratos. Excited, he says this weapon will make his fights much easier from now on. Spitting the chain with the scythe, Kang Han-soo is very pleased. He wonders why not test the weapon now. Quickly, several undead rise from the ground, and he prepares to fight. Eager, he thinks that only 10 days remain until the end of the defense battle, and he's very curious to see who will take the initiative with the remaining time they have. 10 days have passed. With a menacing smile, the demon says that this time, the travelers will certainly keep things interesting here. He states they've prepared a grand event for those who can survive the longest. Many people are shouting, demanding to know what's happening since the next monster wave hasn't started yet. Several monsters were killed during these days. Suddenly, another monster appears. Multiple demon bodies are fusing together inside the fortress through a portal. They are merging into one monster. This is the hidden mission within the central island. All of them fuse into a demon woman. Upon awakening, she's already excited to fight, wearing black flames as clothing. She starts laughing maniacally. The little demon says that if it were up to the people, he wouldn't get too close to the fortress walls, because it's not like they can escape from there anyway. He then affirms that only two options remain. The first is that they can stay in place, resisting the attack of the undead, and then use the crystal to escape. However, the undead now are different from those they faced before. This way, they can anxiously await the undead. If they don't want the first option, they have the second, which consists of facing the Demon King that has been summoned inside the fortress. Shocked, a man asks if it's really the Demon King, and the woman says they never mentioned that before. While they argue, the demon states that he wanted to bring the Demon King. The demon explained that he had avoided summoning the Demon King earlier because there was a high risk that the Demon King would annihilate everyone outright. However, he admitted that such an outcome was bound to happen eventually, and then informed them that the crystal would activate in 30 minutes. This crystal had the capacity to transport only 500 people, meaning half of those present would be left behind. He added that if they managed to defeat the Demon King, everyone would be allowed to escape. Despite the gravity of the situation, he expressed eagerness to see how events would unfold and said he would patiently await their decision. The medic, clearly frustrated, lamented that his sole goal had been to survive just 1 month. Suddenly, applause broke out. Lee, the monarch, suggested they should make good use of the 30 minutes and try to escape using the crystal. Meanwhile, a boy wearing glasses quietly observed that the monarch probably only cared about saving his own clan. The two locked eyes in tense silence. The man responded by questioning whether it wouldn't be wiser to defend their position rather than rushing forward recklessly. They needed to devise a plan to save the majority. The man accused the monarch of selfishly prioritizing his own people's survival over others. Without reacting, the monarch asked if the man had a better idea. He pointed out that the demons had wiped out dozens with a single strike on the first day, casting doubt on their chances of defeating the Demon King. He then asked if they would rather survive and move together to the next island. The man's face twisted into a grim expression as he challenged whether rushing headlong into danger was the right choice. Both the boy and his companion fell silent. Nearby, a girl grew anxious, sensing the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Trying to reassure herself, she reminded herself they were allies with the Smaug clan and hoped for the best. At that moment, the protagonist arrived, stating firmly that defeating the Demon King was their only chance of escape. This declaration made the girl even more nervous and confused. The protagonist concluded that logically, only those who survived the battle would be able to leave. The man inwardly grumbled about the protagonist meddling once again. The monarch remarked that the protagonist must be very confident in his survival. Cyan Kang added that maybe he was right, but if they fought over the crystal, at least 500 people would surely perish, if not more. A blonde girl volunteered to follow the protagonist under those circumstances. She insisted that they couldn't trust the clan leaders, so joining forces with the clans was pointless for now. Excited, many raised their hands, declaring they would fight the Demon King and escape together. More members arrived, pledging their support to Kang Hanzo. The earlier skeptic grew increasingly uneasy, arguing that if things continued like this, Kang Hanzo had to be stopped immediately to break their morale. Once the battle began, survival would be everyone's priority. As she pondered ambushing him, Kang warned her not to consider fighting yet, throwing his chained scythe close to her and threatening that dealing with the consequences would be difficult. Terrified, she withdrew. The monarch stepped in, calling for cooperation and resolution of disputes, declaring he would proceed with his plan for now. With a grim expression, he said they still had a chance. It seemed most had already made their decision. Yet, the hero asked for a moment before anything else happened, saying he needed to set things straight. He then drew his new weapon and launched a chained attack at the crystal, applying so much pressure with the chains that the crystal cracked. The monarch and his ally were left stunned, questioning what he was doing. The protagonist explained that since they were heading to the fortress, the crystal would no longer be necessary. An escape route would only weaken them. People murmured agreement, insisting their focus must be on defeating the Demon King. They all needed to head south for the battle. Breaking the tension, Kang told everyone not to follow him and to focus on their own survival. At that moment, the countdown ended and the trial began. Sometime later, they reached the Demon King's fortress. Inside, the surgeon observed that this fortress was unlike the one he remembered. It was completely transformed. The place was dark and bathed in a purple glow, with numerous lit candelabras giving it the air of a vast cathedral. The fortress was so enormous that there wasn't enough light to see its full extent. Simply entering the fortress filled everyone with dread. The Demon King, appearing excited, greeted them, remarking it had been a long time. He warned that if they came seeking entertainment, he wouldn't allow them to leave. Suddenly, the doors slammed shut with a deafening crash, frightening everyone. A system notification confirmed the fortress was sealed. The ground beneath them began to crumble rapidly. From beneath the floor, several grotesque, undead, goblin-like monsters emerged, causing one woman to scream in terror as a creature charged at her. The protagonist's weapon struck down the attacker as he urged everyone to stay calm, reminding them these monsters were no different from those they had fought before. Seeing a boy who had fallen and was crying, he called on him to gather his courage and fight back.